Well, hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to a very belated episode of Buck the System, and Happy New Year. I apologize that I've been pretty much MIA for like the last 6 or 8 months. I started 2020 with the best intentions of doing very regular content, and then 2020 happened, and it was pretty weird, and it definitely messed me up. But through it all, I have got some stuff set up that has greatly increased my flexibility and my ability to do this. And so I'm finally getting back to it with an episode that has actually been in the works since right about the time that I kind of stopped making videos for the rest of the year. So this video is going to be a response to a YouTuber named Donovan Sharpe. He's sort of a Manosphere pickup artist type guy. I don't know exactly what you'd call him. Self-proclaimed expert guru on the subject of women. And this all started back like April of last year. My wife, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, you guys watching this who are thinking that she's like gonna turn against me ideologically, don't get too excited. I said this exact same thing about the episode we did about like Mr. Atheist and God is gray and stuff. These atheist people, like my wife hate watches a lot of content. Maybe I shouldn't call it hate watching, but she watches a lot of content that she doesn't necessarily agree with, but finds interesting. And she'd been watching this guy Donovan Sharpe, and then all of a sudden one day she's trying to call me while I'm out on a job. She's like, David, Donovan's talking about us. What happened was that this guy Donovan found a video that my wife and I had made several years ago. I think it was like 2018 that we made it. Maybe it was 2019. I think she was pregnant with Dallas at the time, but it was an older video. At this point, it's like a year and a half old. And in it, we were talking about some conversations I'd had with some MGTOW types. If you're like completely confused by all this, don't worry. It will probably make sense as it goes forward, but to sum it up, MGTOWs is an acronym that stands for Men Going Their Own Way. It's sort of like men who've decided that serious relationships with women are a waste of time. I don't know. Donovan Sharpe isn't necessarily a MGTOW, but there's a lot of crossover between his fan base and like the MGTOW movement. So he ended up watching the video, doing a response to it, and coming to some very interesting conclusions that we will get to. And so right then I wanted to make a response to this, but I got busy, and those of you who know me know that I'm very much a perfectionist. So it just kind of never happened. But as luck would have it, there was recently a big kerfluffle on the internet and sort of in the manosphere. I don't know what you'd call him. I think he calls himself an image consultant, whatever that is. This dude named Kevin Samuels made a statement to a woman. He called her average at best, and basically said she didn't have much hope of getting the kind of man that she wanted to get in his dating advice to her. And a lot of people on the internet made response videos to it, my wife included. She basically talked about how absurd it was. I tend to agree with her assessment of it. And because of that video, that put us on Donovan Sharpe's radar again, and some of these other Manosphere types. My wife's videos have been getting a lot of attention from this crowd and from people who oppose them, a lot of women who oppose them in particular, but not like liberal women or anything. It seems like fairly traditional women for the most part, mostly black women. It's a very weird time we're living in. But so I ended up making like a follow-up video with her where I appeared for a couple minutes, and Donovan talked about that video as well. So that's sort of what we're going to be responding to today. A little bit the video in the past, a little bit the video that just recently came out like a week or so ago. So I can imagine that you guys are, like I said, a little confused right now. I'm talking about a lot of stuff that I don't normally talk about on my channel. So let's just start watching some clips of the video that Donovan made here, and maybe things will start to make sense.
But the reason why I'm talking about this is because Cassie did a response video to some Jessica X. I've never heard of her until actually today. Kevin told me about her. It was a response to a response to a response. I get lost in the sauce.
Okay, so I just wanted to start with that clip really quick because Donovan hits the nail on the head there. It's a response to response to response. It's easy to get lost in it. This video is going to be a little confusing if you don't kind of understand the timeline. Below this video, I will link to all the other videos that are referenced here because you're going to have me down here in the corner talking about a video with Donovan where he is talking about a video with Donovan where he is in that video talking about Cassie and I. So it's very complicated. We're very much in danger of being lost in the dreamscape with Leonardo DiCaprio here. Yeah, so Donovan, I assume you will watch this, and I just want to say, if you want to make a response to it, I'll watch it. I'm probably not going to respond to another video because this really is getting like kind of confusing and too many layers here. But if you want to bring me on your show and have like a real conversation about this kind of stuff, I would be happy to. And I also, from what I understand, looking at like your Instagram and some comments people have made and things you've said and the somewhat limited amount of your content that I've watched, sounds like maybe you're in the Reno area now or own like a second house there. If that's the case, whenever you're in Reno, if you want to bring me on the show, I will gladly drive down there. I only live about 4 hours from Reno, and I kind of enjoy heading down that way. So I'll come on and be in studio, and we can have a really good Manosphere pickup artist, MGTOW kind of perspective versus I don't really like this term, but I guess a tradcon perspective. That's what people seem to always call me in like the comments on your videos. When I hear the term tradcon, I think like angry virginal Catholics on the internet who like really want the Crusades to start again. But yeah, I guess you could call me a tradcon, a traditional conservative, for those of you just watching it. But let's get on with this now and start getting into the meat of Donovan's video.
They made a video about a bunch of about an article that talks about the epidemic of women spurgling. In other words, sperm-jacking men. Women becoming pregnant by men unbeknownst to the men. I'm on birth control. The guy doesn't know she's not on birth control. He shoots his load on her. She gets pregnant. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I can't believe you're pregnant. So David and Cassie West chastised the article because they believe, or at least she believes, that it's not wrong for women to sperm jack men.
Okay, neither Cassie or I believe that it is right to sperm jack men. We think it's wrong. You guys have been mischaracterizing what we said here from the very beginning. What we were saying was that we have very little sympathy for anyone in this story because, the men who were getting sperm jacked were engaged in the sin of fornication. They shouldn't have been doing that. If they didn't want to get sperm jacked, maybe they shouldn't have been out sleeping around, having promiscuous sex. I don't really feel that bad for them. I don't feel particularly bad, I guess, either for the women who put themselves in a position where they're not getting married because they pursued careers and they pursued degrees and all sorts of things instead of prioritizing marriage. That's very much their fault too. And that was kind of our point. We think that both sides are sinning. Both sides are engaged in fornication. Both sides are engaged in, it would seem, actively avoiding marriage. Both sides are engaged in all sorts of sin. And yes, sperm jacking is itself a sin, but it's a sin beget from a sin from another sin. Like, guys, we don't think what they did was okay. We just don't feel bad for them. We don't feel like they're some great victim. Like, if they'd gone out and just gotten married and waited to have sex until they were married, or even, from a secular perspective, at least until they were truly committed to somebody, they wouldn't have had this problem. So it's very hard for us to have much sympathy for them in this situation.
Cassie's husband David gets on the screen, and and what he says, it's just so clear that even if he wasn't pandering to his wife, it's clear that he suffers from the blue pill mindset.
Okay, so this is the main one of the main things I want to address here, and we've kind of already addressed it a little bit. We'll get to this more later, and if you go watch the videos, you'll see kind of the full context. But I actually called into Donovan's show later, but they all seem to think I was a male feminist and that I was some blue-pilled simp. I guess simp is short. I think it's short for simpleton. Basically, it's what they call like guys who are getting suckered by women. Guys who are like white knighting for women who don't care about them as much as they care about the woman, that sort of thing. It's kind of the same sort of thing as a cuck. People use that term a lot. Not like the actual term cuck, but the way it's come to be used on the internet. They're always like accusing me of being liberal, which is like funny. It's news to me. If you hadn't noticed from my studio here. And it's funny because as much as these guys think that they're like red-pilled and sort of, sort of conservative and would probably consider themselves believers in limited government, and we might actually agree on a lot of things, they basically behave exactly the same way as your typical left-wing social justice warrior. Now, to explain what I mean by that, let's take a little dive into some of my recent social media exploits that some of you might not be aware of, because I have been very, very heavily censored on social media the last few months, and I haven't been making videos. So back in early November, I posted a picture of my Halloween costume. I dressed up as Kyle Rittenhouse, just like I had told people I would. And some liberals got wind of it and absolutely lost their mind. I got brigaded to a massive degree. This one, like, lefty journalist guy retweeted a picture of me and called me a fascist. He said something like, "Oh, look, a fascist dressing up as a mass murderer." And that got a ton of traction. I got like 3,000 retweets. People were brigading me. I was having some good conversations with people, and then I got banned from Twitter for the next 30 days. I may now be permanently banned from Twitter, because after that, when I got unbanned within a few days, I said that ATF agents should be tarred and feathered. And Twitter seems to have permanently banned me for promoting violence, I guess, and harassment. I guess they just can't take any kind of joke, and they don't like freedom. These people were all attacking me so vitriolically and so baselessly. It's a classic tactic of, the left and social justice warrior types to completely redefine words so that they basically have no meaning, and they mean, they have no meaning to those of us who are intelligent and who, have a grasp of the English language. But to them, they just make it mean whatever they want it to mean. So in this case, they were calling me a Nazi. They were calling me a fascist. Never mind that if you talked to literally anyone that I know and you asked them, "Hey, of all the people that you know, if you guys had been alive in, late 1930s, early 1940s Germany, who of all your friends and acquaintances would have been the very first person to go Hugo Stiglitz on the Third Reich?" Every single one of them, without fail, would say, "Oh, David West. He would kill every Nazi that he could. He would absolutely have been the guy who would have, gone Hugo Stiglitz or Bielski brothers and started fighting Nazis in the woods." And yet, it doesn't matter to them. They just want to call me a Nazi. They want to call me a racist. Who cares that Kyle Rittenhouse did not shoot any black people? Who cares that he shot a bunch of white communists who were assaulting him? Who cares that there's really no evidence at all that he was racist? Who cares that there's zero evidence that I'm racist? Who cares that I am a fundamentalist conservative Christian who believes that race is a social construct because all human beings are descended from two people? Who cares that I got out of the military as a conscientious objector when I decided that the war on terror was murderous and evil and, frankly, racist against Middle Easterners, and I decided that I could not in good conscience fight a war against people who were really only doing what I would do if my country was invaded, which is fight back. Never mind that. I'm just a racist and a fascist now because I dressed up as a guy who killed a couple of white rioters and communists who assaulted him. All that is to say, you Manosphere types are basically doing the exact same thing to me. Let's look at a comment here. So this comment got, at the time that I took the screen grab, had 17 likes or upvotes, whatever you want to call them, on YouTube. This was on Donovan's video. It probably has more now. It was one of the more liked comments. And this is talking about me. This guy, Sovereign Resistance, says he, referring to me, doesn't like conflict, and he's somewhat of a people pleaser. He seems like the type to be easily convinced and go with the narrative rather than do some critical thinking for himself. Guys, this is like the most comically inaccurate analysis of me I've ever heard. This is not me trying to toot my own horn and act like I'm so good, because I do think critically and I am not easily convinced to go with the narrative, and I'm not at all a people pleaser, and I'm actually a pretty high conflict person. I'm not trying to like brag about those things. It's just not true. If you talked to anyone that knows me, they would all tell you that I am extremely opinionated, that I am very good at defending my positions, that I will not back down from any kind of fight, that I can be open-minded. Like, if you can show me stuff to change my mind, I am willing to do that, but I am not easily convinced to go with a narrative. And a lot of people would probably consider me one of the more critical thinking people that they know. So, like, why is this getting so many likes? Why do people watch these videos of me, and mostly small out of context segments with a lot of color commentary coming from Donovan, and then think they have this great read on me? It is objectively and demonstrably not a good read on me, and yet they all go along with it. They all like it. The only thing I can, like I said, liken it to is social justice warriors who just go along with whatever reinforces their beliefs, with whatever reinforces what they want to hear. This is not the behavior of an intellectually honest or well-informed person. So now that I've sort of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about here, let's go back to some more of Donovan's videos and see what else he has to say.
But trust and believe, just like I told you guys 8 months ago, there is a chink in the armor. And I told you guys it's not going to be long. And those of you guys who are my patrons, you guys will see that whole video. I told you it's not going to be long before Cassie starts setting the table to step out on David.
Okay, so I know that a lot of you who are watching this, who've come over from the Manosphere and who are fans of Donovan, are probably thinking right now that, oh, well, of course you're going to deny all this stuff, but we've already got you pegged. Look at all the stuff Donovan said. How can you refute that? Well, I'm going to refute a lot of that right now. I'm actually going to go through some things that Donovan has said about me and my wife. I'm going to go through his analysis of photos of us and look at the conclusions that he drew. And I'm going to show you that those are not accurate, and not just not accurate, but are so comically wrong that you really shouldn't be taking what Donovan says as seriously as you do.
One thing I quickly noticed when I went through Cassie's Facebook page is that, number one, David doesn't have a Facebook page, and number two, there were a few pictures on her Facebook page that says that she might not be as turned on by him as he is her. So take a look at your screen, guys. This is the first picture I came across. David is leaning forward. Cassie is not leaning at all. As a matter of fact, she's looking at him like, yeah, I know you want me. I don't have to come to you. You got to come to me. I am higher value than you.
Okay, so first let's address the fact that Donovan said that I didn't have a Facebook page. At the time, my Facebook page was deactivated for about a month because I was working on a screenplay and I needed to stop arguing with people about stuff on Facebook. This would have been like March, April timeframe when he would have taken these screen grabs. So at the time, I was probably arguing with people who were justifying lockdowns and stuff. It was just a big waste of my time, and I deactivated my Facebook for a while. I am generally more active on social media than my wife is. So this is silly, but he really had not a ton of way of knowing that. So let's look at something that I think is more absurd, and that's his analysis of these photos. So here he says that, oh, look, I'm just leaning in, and Cassie's not leaning into me. He seems to forget that pictures don't really tell a complete story, and I'm going to prove to you that this is not the complete story here. Now, this sort of like body language analysis is really popular on YouTube in a lot of circles besides just the Manosphere, but the Manosphere eats this stuff up in particular, and I don't get it because it's dumb. It's not accurate, guys. Let's see what was actually going on here. So this is not just a photo. It is a screen grab from a video. That's why it's not particularly high quality. It's a webcam, probably actually at the time was probably just a built-in webcam on Cassie's laptop recording this, and she took a screen grab from it. It was from a video that Cassie and I made just a few weeks after we got married called Why People Adore Trump's Muslim Ban and Why It's Bad for All of Us. I'll link to the video down below, but let's just go ahead and watch a little clip here. This is the very end of the video. This was like literally the last couple seconds of the video. We just finished talking, and then I leaned in and gave Cassie a kiss.
All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Bye.
So there you go. Not exactly the story that Donovan told about it. In fact, not only was it not showing that Cassie didn't want me, Cassie took that screen grab at that particular angle because she thought that I looked good. We're going to get into this later in the video where we talk about some other times where Cassie basically did the same thing. She left stuff in a video because she thought it made me look good, and people have twisted that to be somehow evidence that there's problems in my wife and I's marriage. And of course, every marriage has problems. We're no exception. But none of the problems that you guys are picking out are the actual problems that we have. And that's why this is so funny. That I leaned forward. I asked her to kiss me. She did it right away. And that was that. There was the body language that you read into that moment just didn't exist.
Oh, this is another picture of David and Cassie in their car. The typical picture of a man who loves his wife more than she loves him. He's paying attention to her. She's paying attention to the camera. You can see Cassie's very pretty. She's very attractive. This picture shows that she is more into herself than she is into him. This is another selfie that Cassie took, and you can see Cassie is quite attractive. But David is looking up at her. Cassie is looking down at the camera.
Okay, so I'll be upfront and say these are not my favorite pictures of myself, but these aren't pictures of me looking at her longingly while she's annoying me. These are pictures where I am being a good sport and doing a little selfie photo shoot with my wife. I tend to think that selfie photo shoots are pretty stupid. The selfies that I take tend to either be like me holding my kids or purely documentary, like, oh, I'm here at a cool place. I'm going to take a quick selfie of me to remember it. I don't really do like, oh, let's just sit there and do a photo shoot of myself. So I'm kind of doing, I don't know, I guess goofier, cuter type poses than I would normally do to make my wife happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that, some of you guys are like, oh, you should never appease a woman, because to some of these guys, it seems like being nice to a woman is feminism, which is utter nonsense. But so that was it. That was all that I was doing. I'll just throw a few of my pictures up here from Facebook. These are some of my profile pictures. Look at my typical profile picture. I tend to be a pretty stoic guy. I am not generally doing, I'm not generally doing these sort of poses. I'm not generally looking longingly at Cassie. I just sometimes do pictures like that for the sake of her. We took a bunch of them, and she picked the ones that she did because those were the ones where she thought that me and her looked the best. You are reading way too much into something that is honestly fairly shallow.
Oh, well, what's this? This is Cassie and her husband, but Cassie seems to have cut her husband out of the picture. Yeah, that's not good. That's not a good look. Not a good look.
Okay, so first of all, this is a profile picture. They are limited to a square aspect ratio, so you basically have to crop them. And oftentimes that means cropping other people out of them so that the profile picture of you can focus just on you. And sometimes the crops get a little weird because since it's square, you can't, you have to dramatically reframe the photo, basically. So, just that right out of the way. Here's my current profile picture on Facebook. This is a picture of me at my daughter's 8th birthday party a few months ago. She wanted to do a donut-themed birthday party, so we have some candles in the donuts there. And here you can see the full photo where it has my entire family pretty much, and my wife is definitely in it. But I cropped her out for the photo because I thought it was kind of a funny photo. Interestingly enough, I thought it was a funny photo because it basically looks like I'm mansplaining to somebody. I'm arguing with them. And, even had some comments on on it from some friends of mine who were like, wow, this is so you. This is like the most accurate picture of your personality. And I see why they're saying that. And, Donovan could, I'm sure, do some kind of body language analysis of this photo. The funny thing would be there was nothing like that going on when that photo was taken. All that I was doing was like, I don't remember what I was doing, but I wasn't arguing with anyone. I wasn't having a debate. I just made some comment. I might have even made a joke or laughed at somebody else's and just did that gesture. And while it looked like me in the middle of a heated debate, whatever, body language you would try to read into it simply didn't exist because that was not actually what was going on there. All that aside, the funniest thing about this particular picture is that I am not cropped out of it. That's not me. I'm not in this photo. I don't really wear suits. Like, guys, you can't get anything right here.
And this, of course, and again, I blocked out their kids because, listen, like, honestly, again, I'm keeping it real. Beautiful family, man. I'm never going to throw shade on the traditional nuclear family. Both parents in the home, both traditionalists. Like, dude, I give them all the credit in the world. Beautiful family, but as you can see, they have their hands. She's got her hands around him, but he's leaning in and she looks like she's leaning away.
Okay, so this is by far the best photo to analyze because the analysis is spectacularly bad, and not even just because of factors that Donovan couldn't have known. There's stuff in it that I will get to in a second that he should have known that his analysis was not exactly accurate. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that I think Donovan was lying or being disingenuous or anything. I actually don't dislike Donovan at all. Some of the Manosphere types and a lot of the MGTOW types I cannot stand. But I honestly think that Donovan seems like a dude I could have a pretty good time with. Like if we went to the shooting range or something, we would definitely have a good time. We could have some good conversation. I do think that we probably politically have a lot more common ground than people might realize. And when I actually called into his show to discuss this 8 months ago, whenever that was, he sort of realized that. I kind of knew it beforehand. Yeah, so I don't dislike Donovan. I do appreciate, the sentiment of blurring out our kids. It wasn't necessary, but I do appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the stuff that he says, complimenting our family. And I will say, if you go watch the two videos, he's pretty vitriolic in a lot of this one. And then me and him talk, and he kind of walks it back, and he actually did a pretty decent thing, I thought, and took down some of the stuff when he realized he'd been maybe a little off base and a little harsh, and realized that I wasn't like a bad guy and stuff. And then you watch the second video, and while his criticisms are flawed, he doesn't like hate us or anything. So this isn't really like an angry response. Anyway, back to the photo. Let me throw up the uncensored version of this photo. So as you can see here, When you're looking at the uncensored version of this photo, our daughter is crying, and our dog is looking off to the west, where he had just seen I think he'd just seen a chipmunk or a bird, squirrel, something. It was a couple years ago, so I don't remember exactly. But he saw something and he started going crazy, and he like scratched our daughter Scarlett's face, and she started screaming and crying. And on top of that, we were taking these photos at my cousin's house. I'm taking them by myself. The camera's on a tripod. I'm hitting the shutter, setting things up, hitting the shutter, and then quickly, 10 seconds, holding a baby, running through these lava rocks. If you notice here, I only look like I'm about 3 inches taller than my wife in this photo. That is not the case. If you look at any other picture of us, including one of the other sort of more traditional Christmas photos from that day that we took, which I'll throw up on the screen here, I'm like a head or more, head and a half taller than my wife. But in this picture, we're standing on like these lava rocks. You can kind of see behind us. It's super rocky. Cassie's like balancing. Scarlett's screaming and crying. I'm running from behind the camera with the baby, picking my way through rocks because I don't want to fall and drop poor Kirk, who was like 2 months old in this picture, month and a half old. He wasn't very old. I don't want to drop him on the rock, so I'm being careful. So I get up there like just in time as this photo is melting down before my eyes. And that's the only reason that we're standing like that. There's no body language conspiracy to be had here. She's not leaning away from me. I'm not like leaning towards, well, I am leaning towards her, but only as a matter of necessity to try to get into the photo. I'm not like longingly reaching for her while she kind of pulls away. That's just not what happened. And Donovan, I feel like, like I said, I appreciate the sentiment of blurring our kids, but you kind of took some major context out of this picture. I feel like you should have known from our daughter screaming and crying that this was like a photo gone wrong. Even if you didn't know that I was the one taking the photo real quick and hitting the shutter and then running back out in front of it, even that you should have been able to guess. I'm obviously a filmmaker and a relatively skilled photographer if you look at my stuff, so why wouldn't I be the one taking photos? You should have known that this was like a photo that we put up because it's funny. We didn't put this up really as like a traditional family photo. We sent it out and we put it up to people. We put it up online for people to see because it's hilarious. Watching our daughter cry and scream is just comical. And I mean, some of the pictures that I talked about, like the ones where I looked a little goofy, you guys can try to argue with that. You can try to say, oh no, you're just making excuses. Dude, you really can't here. If you don't believe my story about this photo, your mind just can't be changed. You're a partisan hack. You are as bad as the social justice left, who thinks that Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer simply because they don't agree with his politics and they don't like guns. I mean, this is pretty irrefutable evidence that I am putting up for this picture, at least, that what Donovan said was nonsense.
I would love to debate this guy. I really would. I know he wouldn't because he's gonna come off as, I have better things to do. No, you're fucking scared because you're a coward. David strikes me as the kind of guy who he would never call in and he would never come on to the show to debate me because he's afraid, but he would point out all the reasons as to why he can't or won't. You're a fucking coward, David. I can tell just by looking at your body language.
Oh man. So again, I mean, there he actually dropped the term body language. He takes the stuff way too seriously. And as Donovan himself realized just a few minutes later when I called into the show and talked to him, I wasn't actually a coward. As anyone who knows me would have said, anyone who knows me would have heard that clip saying that, oh, you're afraid to debate, and laughed at you so hard. Just like, with the leftists calling me a Nazi and a fascist because I support Kyle Rittenhouse, it is objectively wrong to say that I am afraid to debate people. Everyone knows. I've done like public debates before on like the topic of gun control. I've organized them. I've gone out of my way to debate people. I enjoy debating people, and I was never even like some nerd who was in like a debate team in high school or anything. I just like getting the truth out there. But let's hear in Donovan's own words just how wrong he was about this assertion.
NYKia31 says, credit to David for having the fortitude to stand up and articulate his points. That's what men do. He may be more of a fan than it appears. I agree. I think David and I are like-minded in a lot of different ways, man.
There you have it. That's Donovan's own words. There couldn't have been more than maybe 30 minutes between those two clips that we just saw. They're from the same exact live stream. He's wearing the same outfit. It's just a later point in his 2 or 3 hour stream, however long it was. So, look, we have now established through my refutations of Donovan's body language analysis of Cassie and my photos, as well as his backtrack here on his assertion that I am a coward because of my body language. We've established that Donovan's assertions are not nearly as credible as a lot of you think they are. And again, I don't mean this to like insult Donovan, but you guys do have to remember he's a content creator. He needs to do long live streams so that he can get lots of super chats from you guys. So he's kind of winging it a lot of the time in his commentary and analysis here. And as you can tell, he gets things wrong a lot. You can't just believe someone because of how forcefully they say something and because of how blustery they are as they say it. It's actually really funny to me how many of you in Donovan's audience think that you're some kind of like big bad alpha male. Dude, you guys are completely beta and like, now I don't say that as an insult. I would, if we're going to use like the alpha beta descriptors, I think it makes sense to use the sort of expanded alpha, beta, delta, gamma, whatever deal that I think Vox Day came up with that. I don't actually really know very much about Vox Day. I just know that he's friends with Owen Benjamin, and I'm sort of a fan of Owen Benjamin, even though I often disagree with him. I think that if we're going to view this as like a valid sort of personality descriptor, I think we need to go with that expanded definition. So when I say you're a beta, I'm not saying like you're a pathetic, simpering little piece of shit, little weasel. I'm just saying that you're not the leader. You're not the alpha dog. You are fairly easily swayed, and you will support and proclaim the glory of your leader. Your leader in this case being Donovan. I'd say Donovan could totally qualify as an alpha. You guys don't, though. You guys just go along with what he says and parrots what he says without doing any real critical thinking of your own. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. You just got to choose an alpha who has a lot of truth in what he says.
The average 25-year-old woman finds the average 45-year-old man more attractive than the average 25-year-old man. That's a fact.
I don't believe that's a fact for a second. I call bullshit on that. This is kind of the main contention that's been going on right now between people like my wife and I and the Manosphere types. We simply do not agree with the assertion that the 25-year-olds are more interested in 45-year-olds. I will flat out say right now, and I would love to come on and actually discuss this at length with you, Donovan, but I think that a multi-millionaire 55-year-old will be at a huge disadvantage picking up 25-year-olds versus a, fairly comfortably middle-class 30-year-old like me. The women don't want old men. Sure, they want maybe a little bit older guy who's a little bit more established and has, enough resources to take care of them. Certainly me owning a house, me making decent money, would be points in my favor if I was single and trying to pick up 25-year-old women. But I don't think they're going to be like, oh, well, the 55-year-old man, he makes a $400,000-$500,000 a year and he's worth several million, so we'll go with him. They're not going to say that. They'd go with me. They'd know that I'm an ambitious, hardworking guy who, has a bright future and can totally make more money. But I'm also not going to croak on them when they're 50. I'm not going to be old and wrinkly. I'm not already old and wrinkly. I'm their age. We have very similar life experiences, very similar cultural touchstones, all that stuff. I just don't believe this. This is absolute nonsense. And it's funny how often you guys try to back this claim up just by going to anecdotes. And every time we point out, well, age gap relationships fail and really aren't all that common, you guys come up with so many excuses for that and fall back on whatever anecdote you can. Dude, you guys are literally as bad as the women who are like, well, I can wait to have kids till I'm 45 because that's what Renee Zellweger or whoever did. And it's like, guys, stop it.
That is a fact. Your wife has to do this, okay? Cassie has to do this. What she is doing is she is trying to she's how can I put this? She's trying to make sure that you're not having thoughts of stepping out on her.
Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting. And it again shows fairly objectively how uncredible Donovan's analysis of our relationship and likely a whole lot of other stuff is. Just a few minutes ago, Donovan was saying that there's cracks in the armor. You can tell that Cassie isn't too attracted to me because of this body language and stuff, and I'm way more into her than she is into me. And these cracks are going to widen, and before too long, she's going to be stepping out and cheating on me. Okay, I mean, if you want to promote that theory, fine. It's ridiculous. But now you're promoting basically the opposite theory. Now you're trying to say that Cassie is setting up some elaborate thing. She's so desperate to keep me. She's so worried that I'm going to leave her that she is trying to make me think that, older men who are attracted to 25-year-old women are creeps, and any young girl who's attracted to an older man is mentally ill. She's going to talk about that stuff in a second here. I might have paused this just a split second too early. But how can both of these theories be true at the same time? Like, Donovan, it just sounds like you're throwing whatever you can at the wall and hoping that something sticks. And guys who are listening to this and taking it all seriously, you are not thinking very critically about this because it does not make much sense to promote both of these theories.
You're not having thoughts of divorcing her. She knows that her looks are starting to fade. She's human. She's a woman. She is going to hit the wall. That this is how it is. You probably pretend not to notice. She definitely does. So what she is doing is she is planting seeds in your hindbrain, and you don't even know that they're there. You won't even realize what's happening. But I assume you guys are both the same age. When you guys are both in,
just for the record, we're pretty close in age, but actually, Cassie's 4 years older than me. She just turned 35 December 15th, and I will be turning 31 on February 21st. Yes, Cassie's older than me, and we'll actually get into that a little bit later here.
Your 40s, and you're not really as attracted to her as you once were, and you're thinking, you know what, I really would like to smash these 25-year-olds. Your mind is going to subconsciously tell you, oh, well, I don't know, man. Like, 25-year-old girls are going to think you're literally the crypt keeper.
Okay. Something I'm going to get into a lot in this video, especially as it goes on, is that I don't think that Donovan understands Christianity. He doesn't understand on a fundamental level that there are actual practicing Christians out there, that there are deeply conservative Christians out there who take their faith seriously and believe in a historically orthodox Christian sexual ethic. My wife and I fall into that category. That's what we believe. That doesn't mean that we're perfect. That doesn't mean that we can't lust and that we can't, have temptations. But that's what we believe. So the idea that you think that she needs to tell me that 25-year-olds are going to think I'm creepy to keep me away from them when I'm older, Donovan, my religion keeps me away from them. My religion will keep me from chasing 25-year-olds when I'm in my 40s and married. Granted, if my wife died and I was single again, I still probably would not be chasing 25-year-olds in my 40s. I would probably be chasing women just a few years younger than myself. I would not want to, if I was somehow widowed, and this is actually something Cassie and I talk about a lot. We talk about some of these things other people think are weird, but we're like, oh, it's a very practical thing to talk about. I don't think I would ever date anyone who wasn't at least 16 years older than my daughter. Otherwise, it just gets a little weird. I need to be with someone who would be plausibly old enough to be my daughter's mother. Not so that people will just assume that she is her mother, but just because I don't want to have too weird of a dynamic between the two of them. But we can talk about that more later.
It's not going to be conscious, David. It's going to be subconscious. Then, if you see, oh my God, she's 23 years old. She looked at me like she wants me to come and talk to her. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. If they like the crypt keeper, they're probably have mental problems, and you stay away.
Yeah, again, Donovan, what's going to keep me from talking to women who hit on me, and I get hit on by women fairly often, frankly. My wife and I actually like enjoy it, both of us, when I get like when my wife sees a woman hit on me at the grocery store or something, or look at me, or I come back from being out and I tell her about some woman that was like clearly hitting on me. She loves it. She's not worried about it. It makes her feel desired. It makes her feel like she got a desirable man. But no, it's not going to be me being like, oh, that girl must be crazy, that keeps me away. It is me striving to follow Christ by being a faithful husband that will keep me away.
Theo Wap with the $100 super chat says, obviously, Cassie had many 40-plus men inside of her. She is selling purity before she was eating bananas. Exactly. Why do you think she chose a man who was closer to her in age? Because she knows that men who are younger don't really know the game as well as men who are older. That's what it was. These 45-year-old men passed her around just like 45-year-old men tend to do with women in their 20s. Right? Oh wait, you bang Cassie, you smash? Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, I guess I'm not committing to her. Right? She's like, man, I can't seem to crack it. I can't seem to crack these 45-year-old guys.
Okay, so basically right here, Donovan is saying that my wife, Cassie, before we got together, was being passed around by older men and riding what he would call the cock carousel in some of his other videos. Basically, he's saying that she was a big slut and a whore. Now, I am not a very easily offended person, and I won't even say I'm particularly offended here, but dude, this really isn't cool. You shouldn't be talking about women this way. It's gross, it's immature, and it's slanderous because it isn't true. And I will get into this later. I will address it in a whole lot more detail later in this video, because I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh, you just think it isn't true. Your wife was a giant whore before you got married. No, she wasn't. We're going to talk about that. But for now, let's just see what Donovan had to say the last time he talked about us, because he expressed a very different opinion of Cassie then.
And David, if you're watching, you instinctively know that if your wife Cassie were a slut, you probably wouldn't have married her and put 2 babies in her. You probably wouldn't have done that. Why? Because you as a man, your masculine hard drive knows that a woman who sleeps around and passes her body around, probably not going to make a good wife and mother.
Oh, interesting. So 8 months ago, when Donovan watched that other video and talked about us, he assumed that one of the reasons that I had chosen Cassie was because she was virtuous, was because she hadn't slept around, she hadn't been a whore. And then now he's just saying this. Again, Donovan, it sounds like you're just throwing whatever you can at the wall and hoping that something will stick. All of you Manosphere types seem to be kind of constantly trying to like one up each other. Like, oh no, that girl was girl's husband is a simp. No, he's a simp and she's a whore. Oh yeah, and then you go along with that. It's really weird. It doesn't demonstrate critical thinking abilities. It does not make you guys look like particularly, alpha types. It makes you look like you are very easily swayed. So I repeat again, my wife, Cassie, was not some giant slut before we got married. Not in her youth, not ever. I will go into this in more detail in just a little bit. But for now, I just want you to remember how easily Donovan's assessments of situations changes. These are completely different opinions, and there wasn't a whole lot that went on to change his mind. He just kind of randomly changed it.
Women are aroused by physical specimens. They're attracted to resources. Men, we are aroused and attracted to physical specimens. This is how it is. This is why the species continues on.
This is why the species continues on. I'm not going to disagree with the first thing that you said. I mean, obviously, men like pleasant, attractive women, and we generally don't really care how much money they make or anything. I mean, personally, I prefer women who just want to be stay-at-home moms and stuff. Women being the weaker sex, being the more nurturing sex, they are not just attracted to a man's physical looks and character. They are also attracted to his ability to provide. Perfectly normal, nothing wrong with that. I think we pretty much completely agree there. But here's the thing, Donovan. The human race does not continue on because of male and female attraction. Now, obviously, that plays a role in it. But what makes us continue on is reproduction. Something that you do not seem to encourage your followers to engage in at all. I'm the one carrying on the human race. I'm the one reproducing. We're the ones making kids. You guys aren't. In fact, you guys seem to basically just be encouraging sort of like lifelong sterility. You guys are basically just the right-wing version of like left-wing antinatalists who don't want to have children because of global warming, and they're so worried about destroying the earth so they just won't have any more kids. You guys aren't doing it for those reasons. You're just doing it out of selfish pleasure reasons that actually are going to backfire on you, and we'll get into that more later. I just think it's interesting, though, that you bring up the idea of the human race continuing when that is something that you seem to be almost actively encouraging people to not take part in. It's actually kind of weird to me that you guys seem to act like having kids is bad. And Donovan, to be fair to you in particular, I know you've said that you'll never badmouth the nuclear traditional family. I think that your ideology is kind of antithetical to traditional nuclear families, but I think that's more of an inconsistency on your part. I think you don't actually realize that what you're preaching is antithetical to having a traditional nuclear family. But a lot of people that I've seen commenting on your videos and that I've seen in the Manosphere seem to be much, much, much more actively anti-child. And it's really weird to me that you guys are so anti-child because as based and red-pilled as you think that you are, you don't seem to realize that having children is super based. Now, I think it's safe to assume that everyone watching this video, at least everyone coming over to this video from the Manosphere, would agree with me when I say that vegans are the very antithesis of based. They're anti-based. They're like a black hole that just sucks in baseness and destroys it, because they are denying the fundamental reality that without meat eating and ranching and hunting, the human species would not have survived. So if the vegan is anti-based, that obviously means that hunters and ranchers are based. They're awesome. They're exactly the kind of, salt of the earth people that we need more of. Think about all the other sorts of like skills that are necessary to the survival of the human race. Farming skills are based. War-fighting skills are based. Not to say that war can't be absolutely terrible, but people should be able to defend themselves. Because war is so terrible. You should be able to defend yourself from invaders. You should be able to defend yourself from tyrants. You should be able to defend your family and your freedom. Being able to effectively fight a war is very, very based. Construction skills are based. All these things are so necessary to humanity. None of you guys would speak against those things. You guys would think that the vegans or the people who want to go back to nature and like stop developing any technology, stop building things. Let's just go back to nature. You guys would think those people are idiots. You'd think they are anti-based. So if you recognize that all of those things are based and necessary to the survival of the human race, why don't you also recognize that childbearing is? Your sort of antinatalist ideology is basically to childbearing what being a vegan is to hunting. It's like the antithesis of it, and it is very, very not based. Frankly, it's probably even more anti-based than veganism is, because, at least the human race can kind of survive with vegans. If everyone was an antinatalist, we wouldn't survive at all.
High value, according to Cassie West. Productive men of integrity and character who provide for, protect, and commit to them. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is Cassie's definition of a high value man. Check this out, guys. Women could never describe to you what a high value man is. Would you like to know why? Because they feel it in their loins. That's why. This is why when you ask a woman, what is attractive in a man? What kind of, they can't really tell you. They can't be honest with you. Oh, listen, any given woman would never be able to describe a high value man to you, but trust and believe they know one when they feel one. They observe him for 8 seconds. Bam! Oh, dude, that's the guy right there. She couldn't describe it to you. She couldn't give you some. No, bingo. My panties are wet. My vagina's wet. That's a high value guy. And listen, there's not all high value guys are created equally. This is just how this is. You want to know something, man? High value guys are men that women want to sleep with.
You remember what I said earlier about how Donovan and his followers seem to just not understand an orthodox Christian worldview? They don't seem to understand that there are those of us out there who actually believe that. This is a perfect example of that. The definition of a high value man that Cassie wrote on the screen there seems perfectly reasonable to me. But Donovan wants to just boil it down to women that men want to have sex with. Now, obviously, there is an element of that to this. You know, when a woman wants to marry a man and have his babies, it obviously means that she wants to have sex with him. But Donovan, the way that you guys just disregard values, you just disregard things like integrity and things like sharing beliefs, is bizarre to me. It's not all about like looks and status, or rather, status isn't all about looks and money and stature and that sort of thing. Quality, marriageable women with good values, and I'm specifically talking about Christian women here, but you know, there are quality women who aren't Christian who are quality in the sense that they would be a great match for a non-Christian man who, through the common grace blessings of God, has decent values, even though he is not a saved, you know, regenerate, born-again Christian. Women like that care about a man's integrity. They care about a man's values. They care about what kind of a person a man is and not just what he has, what he looks like. And the fact that you guys so consistently refuse to believe that this is a real phenomenon just kind of makes me think that you have never actually attracted any real high-value women who would be worth marrying.
Dude, this girl, I can promise she's had a lot of sex. Dude, her notch count's probably in the 50s. Real talk. She stopped just in the nick of time. Just in the nick of time.
Okay, so now that Donovan has come out and flat out said that he thinks that Cassie has probably had sex with 50 plus people, let's just address how nonsensical this is. And now remember, the last time that our videos made an appearance on Donovan's show in April, he had a completely different opinion. He said, oh yeah, Cassie probably wasn't a whore. She's one of the exceptions, one of the women who isn't a whore. And now he's completely backtracked and said something completely different. Now, before I address and dismantle the idea that Cassie used to be some kind of, promiscuous slut when she was younger, I do want to read you guys a quick Bible passage that I think is very important here, because I don't want any of you to get a wrong idea about what I'm saying. 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11 says, or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you. But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. Now I want to draw your attention to a particular phrase there. Such were some of you. This is Paul in the inspired scriptures addressing the church in Corinth. And of course, he's saying that, the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God. But then he goes on to say that some of the people in the church were once sexually immoral. They were once idolaters. They were once adulterers. They were guilty of these sins. And still they were washed and sanctified and justified by Jesus Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. So I really don't want any of you to get the idea that I think that someone being having once been promiscuous and once been a whore, like, just disqualifies them from being redeemable. It doesn't. There are plenty of women in the church who were once whores, who were saved and washed in the blood of Christ and made new and genuinely repented of that. And women that do that can be great marriage material. Do not ever think that you should break up with a godly Christian woman if you're a godly young man, simply because you find out that in their past, especially if it was when they were an unbeliever, they were promiscuous. That should not be considered a deal breaker. I personally find it despicable that so many people in the Manosphere put virginity up on this pedestal, and it is important. We should all remain virgins until we're married. That is the ideal. But the difference between Christians who sort of promote virginity until marriage as the ideal, and the Manosphere people who put virginity on like a more secular pedestal, the difference is that the Manosphere guys are out there actively trying to take girls' virginity, actively trying to help girls be more promiscuous by sleeping with them, and then acting like that rules them out, like that ruins them. You're out there actively, in your mind, ruining women forever with no sense of forgiveness. You guys completely lack the Christian sense of forgiveness. Christians recognize that while those are sins, and while those sins will damn you to hell just like any other sin will, they can be forgiven. And we recognize that once they're forgiven, you have to move on from that. Something that I think is very much worth noting in this conversation is that a young woman, say 20 years old, who is incidentally virginal, meaning she isn't a virgin out of principle or because she values virginity and thinks you should save sex for marriage, but she simply has not yet found a man who she wanted to have sex with, at least not badly enough to lose her virginity. That woman is, from a Christian perspective, not going to be as good of marriage material as the woman who is, say 25 years old and slept around a bunch in college, but then got saved and for the last couple years has committed herself to remaining pure until marriage, and who actually holds that belief at this point. That woman who actually believes in the sanctity of marriage and actually believes that sexual purity is something that should be valued is a more virtuous and more marriageable woman than a younger woman who just simply hasn't had sex because she hasn't yet and doesn't actually have any ideological reasons for it. That's not necessarily to say that, if some woman who is a sex addict, who's had hundreds of partners, gets saved, you should immediately be like, oh, well, I'll marry her. No, maybe wait to see how sincere her faith is. Maybe wait to see what her commitment is. But if you get with a woman who 3, 4, 5 years earlier had gotten saved and turned from a life of sleeping around, and made a genuine effort to not do that anymore, and maybe an imperfect effort, but a genuine one and one that did show a lot of fruit, there's absolutely nothing wrong with marrying that woman. She should not be viewed as damaged goods who is no longer worth anything. That is a wicked, wicked lie from the pit of hell. Now, all that said, please believe me when I say that if my wife had been a promiscuous, slutty woman when she was younger, I would admit that, and we would talk about that, and we would say, yeah, she'd made a lot of mistakes. I'm not, trying to be like, oh no, guys, she's not damaged goods. She was a good, virtuous woman. I'm not saying that because I want you to think that. I'm simply saying what I'm saying right now because it is the truth. And I think that the truth should be valued. So here is the final word on Cassie and her alleged promiscuity. And please, I'm asking you guys, man to man, to take what I say as the truth and don't try to be like, no, you're lying, blah, blah, blah. You're just a simp who believes her lies. No, I'm telling you, I know what I'm saying is true. My wife is a terrible liar and one of the most predictable people in the world. She could not fool me about this stuff. From a Christian perspective, of course, Cassie made a few mistakes when she was younger because any kind of sex outside of wedlock is a mistake. But from any sort of meaningful secular perspective, she is not in any way, shape, or form a slut or a whore or promiscuous or whatever you want to say. In fact, most people would have probably considered her a giant prude. She did not lose her virginity until she was 24 years old. And this despite the fact that pretty much all of her friends had lost their virginity years and years and years earlier. Her family was not really religious. She wasn't raised in a Christian home. She, she didn't even become a Christian until she was in her mid-20s. So it's not like, she was the incidentally virginal woman. She was actually someone who stayed a virgin because she was just kind of a prude by nature. I don't want to give you guys like a ton of details about her sex life or anything, but let's just say she never had one night stands. She was never doing like casual nonsense. And as far as your assertion that she's been with 50 plus guys, Donovan, we're talking single digits here. Like, please knock it off. Stop talking about my wife so disrespectfully. And frankly, stop talking about all women so disrespectfully.
The truth about this chick is that she is a successful gold digger. The only thing she cares about is her husband's paycheck. And when the money is gone, she will be too. Well, Big Bo, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Listen, man, there's nothing wrong with gold digging. And again, what we have to understand, guys, there's nothing wrong with gold digging women. There's nothing wrong with them.
A lot of people in these comments are saying like, Cassie's a gold digger. She only cares about my money, blah, blah, blah. I wish that was true because that would mean that I was rich. And I am not. Guys, when we got married, I was making like $25,000 a year. And as I was pursuing my career as a filmmaker, I was mostly making my living by like winning video contests and getting the occasional freelance video job. And I was almost like a college student. Like I wasn't in college, but I was sort of trying to build a skill set and learn how to be a filmmaker. And I was spending all my extra money, putting it back into film productions, putting it into buying camera gear, that sort of stuff. I was making money doing like super random stuff. I'd occasionally do like moves for a moving company. I'd occasionally go buck hay. I'd help like friends split firewood. I would buy and like trade guns and make money that way. It was like a very, very piecemeal thing. I did not have any sort of consistent job because I needed to remain flexible in order to make my films. Like not only was I not rich at that point, I was like borderline poor. But Cassie married me anyway because she believed in me. She loved what I was doing. She saw that I was hardworking. She felt like I was ambitious. And not only that I was ambitious, but she liked what my ambitions were. So she knew that I wouldn't be some guy who was just going to be stuck in like menial minimum wage type jobs his entire life. She knew that I would eventually go places, places that I haven't really quite gone yet, but she still believes that I will. She believes that I'll be successful as a filmmaker. She believes that I'll be making a lot of money. And we always joke, we say she's not a gold digger, she's a prospector. She's like, going out 1849 to California to gamble on the idea that she's going to strike it rich. She's not just like seeing a pot of gold and immediately going for it. She's going where she thinks there will someday be gold. And I mean, obviously Donovan has no problem with that. He seems to have no problem with literal gold diggers. So it's just funny how often people say this in the videos. Like people always seem to think that we're rich. Be it the Manosphere people or like liberals that I'm arguing with, I make an argument against welfare and like, oh, that's easy for you to say, rich boy. I'm like, dude, I was like, I'm from like a family of loggers. Like my dad died in a logging accident with no life insurance. And after that, I was raised by my mom who was widowed and had 4 boys to take care of. Like I don't really come from money. I come from just typical like blue collar working class means. And even at this point, I'm making a lot more money than I was when Cassie and I first got together, but I'm not even making 6 figures. It's so funny how many people, because what Cassie specifically said in the Kevin Samuels video was that a woman who's making 6 figures, it's reasonable of her to expect a man who makes roughly as much as her or more, just so it doesn't throw off like the nurturer provider dynamic. Just because she said that, people assume that that means that she thinks every woman should be going after a guy who makes 6 figures, and they assume that I'm making tons of money. Guys, I'm not. Like, I would consider myself comfortably middle class at this point, but I'm not rich. Don't let all the guns deceive you. I probably spend an irresponsible amount of money on them.
I've literally been dumped by a guy who works at 7-Eleven, and yet I had to let a former quarterback of an Ivy League university who made $400,000 a year, I had to let him down easy.
Oh, that's it. I can't take it. Like, for serious?
It's all true, dude. Everything she's saying is true.
Let's rewind this absolute nut. So dude. So she gets dumped by a guy at 7-Eleven, or she gets dumped by a guy who worked at 7-Eleven, but she had to let down an Ivy League quarterback who also made $400,000 a year. I mean, obviously an Ivy League quarterback isn't making $400,000 a year. Maybe she's talking about his financial status now. Let's listen to this nonsense.
Yes, and he worked at 7-Eleven. And yet I had to let a former quarterback of an Ivy League university who made $400,000 a year, I had to let him down easy. So one guy who works at a gas station thinks I'm trash, and then another guy who is a millionaire in his early 30s thinks I'm a treasure.
Yet you dumped the high value guy who thought you were a treasure and got dumped by the low value guy who thought you were trash. Cassie, sweet dude, you let women talk long enough and eventually they will tell on themselves. There you have it.
She didn't tell on herself.
Even if this quarterback of the football team story is true, that right there, even if that's true, and we know it's not.
It's completely true. You guys just don't know how to listen. And so a lot of people jumped on this in the Jessica X video. She was the one saying like, oh, but college quarterbacks aren't paid. Only professional quarterbacks are paid. So, clearly the story is a lie. She said a former quarterback. She's talking about a dude who was like in his early 30s, and she was dating him, 10 years after his college football career. She was just mentioning that to say like, look, this is a high value guy. We're talking about a strong, tall guy who's done cool stuff, who has an Ivy League education and is making good money at this point. She was not saying he was making $400,000 a year as a college quarterback. Like, learn to listen better, people.
She dumped the guy who works at 7-Eleven. The captain of the football team dumped her. But what she's trying to do, she's trying to give women hope. Well, listen, I got dumped by a low-value guy, but then I had to dump a high-value guy. Cassie, Cassie, you ain't got to lie to kick it, boo. Like, listen, okay, got
I don't know
dumped
why
by
you
a
guys think
high-value
this
guy.
is a
You know
lie.
what,
It's
man?
so bizarre to me.
I've been dumped by hot girls. I've been cheated on by strippers. It is what it is.
Is he like implying here that strippers are high-value women? Like, again, this goes back to the idea that Donovan doesn't understand that there are people who have a different worldview than him. High value is not just, do you want to have sex with them? It's like, do you want to spend your life with them? Is this someone you would view as a good life partner? And I don't think many people would view a stripper as that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I've simped for girls I had no business simping for. But why? Like, Cassie, come on. Oh God, like, dude, I will never understand why people have to just like straight up lie. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Even if what she said is true, and let's just say for the sake of argument that she is telling the truth, you got dumped by a dude a hideous guy who worked at 7-Eleven, but you had to let down the quarterback of an Ivy League school who is now a millionaire. You had to let him down easy. Why was that, Cassie? Oh, I know. Because the guy who worked at 7-Eleven was fun. He gave you an adrenaline rush. You had all the time in the world. That's why you messed around with that guy. Meanwhile, Mr. Ivy League quarterback, you're stringing him along to, you know what? He'll still be there when I'm done banging guys who work at 7-Eleven. No big deal. Guess what? He's now married to the 23-year-old. Who went ahead and locked him down instead of riding the carousel like you decided to do. Cassie smartened up. She said, well, wait a minute. This Mr. Ivy League football quarterback, he wasn't here when I thought he was going to be here. So, you know what? Let me go ahead and lock this down. Listen, I will give it to her. At least she learned her lesson early and managed to lock down who I believe could be a high-value guy, but we'll never know. But got dumped by a guy who works at 7-Eleven, dumped the Ivy League quarterback who is now a millionaire in his 30s. No, that's not bad decision making at all.
So here's the funny thing. They seem to all think that, because they didn't listen particularly well to what she said, they seem to all think that she dated a guy who was the quarterback, and then years later found out he's a millionaire. No. She was dating him when he was making hundreds of $1,000s a year as a young single man. It was years earlier he'd been a quarterback. There's actually like years and years in between these two stories. Like, she dated the 7-Eleven guy as a virginal college student. And that's important because I think in a minute here, I'm going to play another clip where I think they talk about how 7-Eleven dude probably had a big dick, and that's why she was with him, because she was having tons of sex. She was a virginal college student. I already told you guys she didn't lose her virginity until she was 24. She wasn't having sex with that guy. I don't understand why you guys are incapable of understanding that people, even people who aren't Christians, often do date without just having sex immediately. It's crazy. So she was a virgin when she dated the 7-Eleven guy, and he dumped her because of some like mission trip he was going to go on that she thought was like kind of like dumb and weird and virtue signally, which can often be the case with the like mission trips that churches go on. So you guys are just like so off base in this. Now, as far as the this former quarterback who'd been doing that 10 years before she was dating him, who was making, you know, kind of mid six figures in his early 30s, she dated him in her late 20s. Cassie and I met when I was 25 and she was 29. She actually dated this guy like right before I met her. They never had sex. She actually like, she realized she couldn't be with him because the first time that they got kind of cuddly, and now this was a guy that like, he was tall, he was strong, you know, he was like a conservative Christian Baptist guy, and so on paper you'd think everything made sense for her, but he was like a little bit chubby. You know, he hadn't played high level college sports in a decade, so he'd gone a little soft. And she realized like the first time she was ever like at his house, I don't know what they're doing, watching a movie or something, and they got like a little bit cuddly. She like just realized that he was a little too fat for her, and she just couldn't deal with that. And she actually like just left, and was like, no, I don't want to be with him. And after that, he actually still wanted to be with her and was like still like messaging her and being like, hey, you know, why don't we go on some more dates? Why don't we keep dating? Because you know, she'd gone on a number of dates with this guy, and he seemed to want it to become serious, and she did not. She decided she didn't want to be with him, and right around that time, Cassie and I met, and like, you guys all think this isn't true, like, oh, you just believe this. No, I know this is all true, because even besides the fact that I trust my wife, could see through any lie she would ever tell me, because she is like comically bad at lying and predictable. I know this because her mom has confirmed all this. She was living with her mom at the time, and in Texas, and her mom thought it was crazy that she was choosing me over this other guy who on paper was like older and more you know, financially, way more financially successful. And there's actually a couple other like very wealthy, very eligible men who were, you know, early 30s, mid 30s, right, the exact age for her, had pursued her and really wanted her. And her mom thought that she was crazy to go for me over them. But that's because my mother-in-law, bless her heart, lacks the vision that my wife has. She didn't now she sees, oh wow, David has become way more successful. He actually is a talented filmmaker. He probably is going some pretty good places. She just didn't get that. She was like, what? You're going to go with like a random like redneck poor guy instead of these like rich dudes? She just didn't get it, but Cassie did. So for those of you who think this is a lie, and you know, maybe now we're going to try to say that, oh, I just believe my wife's lies. How are you going to argue that? Do you think my mother-in-law's also lying about this? Is she in on it, or am I lying? Like, guys, come on. Use some common sense here. You're just wrong. Your analysis is completely off.
I've literally been dumped by a guy who works at 7-Eleven, and yet I had to let a former quarterback of an Ivy League university.
The Ivy League quarterback who is now a millionaire in his 30s. No, that's not bad decision making at all.
Absolute silliness.
Yeah,
I don't think David is afraid. I don't think David's afraid of him. Well, I don't know. It's hard to figure that out. David's a good-looking guy, man, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe he's not afraid. Maybe listen. I don't think he's
That's some
afraid of his
valid
wife.
points.
I don't think that's the case. I think he's afraid she'll close her legs. He's afraid that she's going to snap him shut. And this is so funny. This is almost like a this is like a coerced interrogation. People saying that you're a simp, David, tell them that you're not a simp. Yes. Theo Wap says, OMG, he is so controlled. Right. Come on.
Guys, I am not in any way, shape, or form controlled by my wife. I mean, at least not in a negative way. Like, obviously, I will, work with her and I'll make decisions based on stuff for her sometimes, because that's what you have to do. Marriage is a little bit give and take. It can't just be all the man bowling over the woman and treating her like a slave. But guys, do you see where I'm sitting right now? I've explained to you several times now that I am not rich. I comfortably like blue collar middle class guy. Dude, I got a lot of guns. You can't even see some of them. I have guns up to the roof. I have multiple tens of thousands of rounds of ammo. I have tons of camera gear. Anytime you go to like a gun forum or Facebook page, like the running joke is always, I better hide my new gun from my wife, or like a picture of an angry woman, and it's like, my wife when I come home with a new gun. Like, most guys are a lot more controlled than me, because my wife doesn't do anything to stop me from buying guns. Like, dude, I could probably have like $2,500 in my bank account, and I could come home with like a $2,200 gun. And the only thing that would piss my wife off would be if after I, spent hours like playing with it, fondling it, disassembling it, testing the trigger repeatedly while like aiming at the wall. If I left it on our bed, she'd be like, David, why on earth did you leave that gun on our bed? And she'd just be annoyed that like I left it in her way. And I'd be like, okay, that's fair. I probably don't need to leave the guns just like lying on the bed and in your way. I can go put them in my my man cave. I'm not controlled. Like, I buy whatever I want whenever I want. My wife does not control what I do. I disappear for days at a time to go camping with like friends when they're like, hey, we got to get out of town. Let's go camping. And I'll go. She is like the most understanding person ever. She's very, very libertarian, not just in a political sense, but in it, like, she doesn't control people. That's just not her. She's like the anti-Karen in a lot of ways. So it's so funny that you guys all think I'm so controlled and so afraid of my wife. Like, to be frank, if anything, one of the bigger problems in our relationship is probably that I can be a little bit too controlling. I am a very perfectionistic person. I'm pretty good at planning. I'm pretty good at, making and executing plans. And so, there'll be times where my wife wants to do something totally, totally benign. She wants to go get food or something while she's out grocery shopping. She comes back with like a coffee, and I'm like, why would, whoa, you didn't even ask me if you could get that. Like, what are you doing? And every now and then I realize, like, dude, she doesn't complain when you go buy thousands of dollars worth of guns, thousands of dollars worth of camera gear, all sorts of stuff. Like, she's entitled to spend a little bit of money on coffee, or, come back with some takeout Thai food or something after she gets done at the grocery store. Like, I do need to give her some freedoms like that. So if anything, we have the opposite problem. And I'm sure some of you guys will try to spin this into like, oh no, she just giving you the illusion of control so that you think you have it. Dude, guys, I am a very assertive person, and I am a whole lot bigger than my wife. Like, I'm not afraid of her. I make all the money. There's been times where we've only had one car because I was working on the other car or something, and I'd just be like, sorry, sweetie, you're stuck with one car. I got to go do stuff. And, like, if anything, sometimes I can take away too much of her freedom, and that's probably something I need to work on. This idea that, like, I'm controlled is just ridiculous. Equally ridiculous is this idea that I'm worried about her closing her legs and cutting me off from sex. I guess that's a common tactic that women do. I always hear about it. That has never been a problem with me and my wife. In fact, you know what? Let me read you guys another Bible passage to remind you that there are Christians out there that take this kind of thing seriously. I know that you don't believe that, Donovan. You probably think that most marriages result in people never having sex again. But listen to this. 1 Corinthians 7, 1 through 5. Principles for marriage. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer. But then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So we take that seriously. Like, we do not view, in a sense, I don't view my body as my own. I recognize that it's my wife's. My wife doesn't view her body as her own. She recognizes that it belongs to me. I said earlier, I don't really want to talk too much about our sex lives, but, it can be healthy in a certain context and when done with discretion. We have a lot of sex. Like, dude, we'll go like 1 to 3 days without having sex because I was gone or was like super busy working late nights or something, or which isn't always a problem because given my flexibility, a lot of times we can just have sex in the middle of the day. My wife will be like, oh, we haven't had sex in like a week. We got to change that. And I'm like, babe, it's been like 2 days. If anything, she's the one that, because she's at home and not working and not busy like I am, she's more the one that will be like, no, we need to have sex like right now. It's been too long. Like, if anyone is ever denying sex to the other one, it's me. Not to be like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do it. But it's usually like, oh, sweetie, I literally, like, I got to be up in 2 hours to do something. I got to sleep right now. Or, no, it's the middle of the day. Like, I have to finish this job I'm working on. I can't just do this right now. Anyone's denying sex in this relationship, it is 1,000% me. There will occasionally be times where Cassie legitimately is like really sick. And she's like, oh, I really just can't tonight. And you know what? It's so uncommon. I have no problem respecting that. She would do the same thing for me. But like, even sometimes when she's like not in the mood, she'll just be like, all right, fine. You just, do a quick pump and dump and we can be done with it. We genuinely respect each other's conjugal rights. And, the only reason that you guys like don't understand this is because you do not have any kind of Christian worldview. And, frankly, I don't think you've ever been in a healthy relationship. I mean, once again, you guys are just completely striking out on your analysis. And I mean, say all you want that I'm just saying this because my wife's controlling me, but do you really think my wife's controlling me? I built a damn gun room. Yes, I don't get it. Like, at some point... Oh, shoot, sorry.
Watch this. Just, I want you to understand.
More bad analysis.
These are the, watch.
Sorry.
He
this is so opposite of what you
to
think
his
it is.
wife that he has to take a phone call. Interesting. His wife didn't edit that out of the video. She could have, but she didn't. She wants the world to know, you know what? My husband is afraid of me. So much, in fact, that he's afraid to say that he's afraid of me. Watch this. Look at the look on his face. Look how he looks at his wife. He's like, oh, shit, I'm getting a phone call. I'm so sorry. Yeah, David. Yep, David's afraid of his wife. David's afraid of his wife. David will not check his wife. David, your wife's out of pocket, man. Wife's out of pocket. Look at this. Look at this. I really don't get it. Ooh, sorry. Now watch how many times he says sorry after this. Watch. Here comes the fake masculinity right here. So, bro.
Hey, what's going on, bro? Sorry.
Okay, just finish what you were saying.
What was I saying? So, like, at some point...
He said sorry. What are we apologizing to women for? What are we apologizing to our wives for getting a phone call while filming her dinky little... Come on, man.
The response that this particular little segment of our video has received and not so much from Donovan, from other people, is hilarious. I mean, Donovan's analysis here is bad, but there were other people coming up with all these wacky conspiracy theories about how, like, the whole phone call was staged and it was like a plot to make it look like I'm not controlled by my wife, or it was a plot that she made to, like, make it look like I'm so submissive to her. It's so dumb. Guys, Donovan's assertion is basically that my wife left this clip in there because she wanted it to look like I'm so afraid of her. By the way, did you catch, like, the very last clip I was showing you, literally from a few minutes earlier in the video that we're commenting on, was Donovan saying that he doesn't really think I'm afraid of my wife, and now here he's saying I'm afraid of my wife. Guys, this is just cheap analysis so that he can generate more and more and more content. And I'm not saying like Donovan's lying or being disingenuous, but he's kind of just babbling on a stream so there's more time for you guys to send him super chats. Come on. So, no, that's not why she left the clip in there. I know my wife. Like I keep saying, she is one of the most predictable people in the world. The second I got that phone call, took it, and I realized what I'd done, and I realized that I'd leaned back in my chair, I was like, oh gosh, she's going to leave that in there, isn't she? And I actually, like, I think I waited to see, I forget if I mentioned it to her like right after this, or if I waited to see until she'd edit it, and I was like, I knew you were going to do that because you're so predictable. I know why she did it. She did it because she thinks that it looks good when you can see more of my body. I'm trying to toot my own horn here, but she literally thinks I'm so attractive that, like, when I lean back, she's like, oh, I want people to see more of your body. She wanted me to be leaned further back this whole video. She was like, why don't you lean back? And I was like, no, because I am a technical guy. I like to be close to the microphone. I don't really care what I look like on camera because I'm a man and I'm not really narcissistic. I want my audio quality to be good, so I was leaned as close to the microphone as possible. And so, and just from a cinematography perspective, I like this kind of talking head and not, being way back there. I know this is a little wider shot of me in here, but I'm shooting this in 4K, so I can crop in to a closer shot as I'm editing it to make it a little bit more seamless. Cassie's just shooting on a 1080p webcam that I got her. So she left it in there because I leaned back and she wanted people to see my body, and she thought it was cute the way that I answered the phone. She literally left it in there because she likes me. Guys, like, she does this stuff all the time. I could probably find other examples of it in her videos if I dug through them enough. Like, I promise you, if I had gotten up and walked out, she would have left it in just so people could see my butt because she thinks my butt is so nice. It's so the opposite of what you think it is. It's comical. And as far as me, like, apologizing to her, dude, don't overanalyze this and act like this is me, like, being a simpering little coward afraid she's going to get mad. Like, I had told, first of all, I told her when I knew she was making a response video, I was like, hey, I want to say something. Let me say something. She thought I was going to do like a little 3-minute blurb, but as I do, I just kind of did a long thing. I think I spoke for like 28 minutes. Gave her way more stuff to have to pick through and edit than she needed, because I just went off on all these tangents and talked about all sorts of stuff I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to do it. And then I told her I'd be back at a certain time to do it. I totally wasn't. I ended up working way later, doing way more stuff, and just kind of was like, I'll be there later. I'll be there later. So I'd already like pushed her off and been like, no, I'll do it later. And she was, a little frustrated by that. She'd wanted me to get it done earlier because she wanted to get the video out. And I was like, oh, too bad. I'm working. I got to go make money. I got stuff to do. And then right when I actually was going to head home, or a little bit before that, actually, one of my good friends, the one who called me in this video, had earlier called me and asked if he could come out and hang out for the night. I don't want to get too much into it. He's been going through some stuff. I actually talked a little bit about it in one of my very first Buck the System episodes on this channel. It has like a title about war or something. I forget exactly what it's called, like the human cost of war or something. But it's the friend that I referenced in that video. He, long story short, had some very traumatic stuff happen at the literally January 1st, 2020. He had a friend, a good friend, a guy that I knew too, but he was obviously way closer to than me. Basically had a sort of like PTSD fueled episode where he like kind of lost his mind and basically ended up committing suicide by cop right in front of my friend. So he watched one of his best friends get gunned down at his house, And he's been kind of struggling with that, very understandably, over the year. And he'd called and asked if he could get away from his house, because with like the anniversary of this event, like a week or so away when this video was made, he needed to get out of there and just come hang out, so he didn't have to be looking at the place in his front yard where his friend was like gunned down by the cops in this tragic incident. So I'd said, yeah, sure, you can come over here. And so then when I showed up at the house, I also had to tell Cassie, hey, so-and-so's coming over, just so you know, like, we're going to be hanging out tonight, so you're going to have to go clean the house. I know I'm totally like cutting into your time to do your video and stuff. And yeah, so I was inconveniencing her quite a bit by doing this, but she just had to understand, like, I'm a good loyal friend and I'm going to do this kind of stuff for my friends. She likes that about me, so it wasn't too big of a problem or anything. And so then I take the phone call from him. I think he was letting me know he was like 20 minutes out or something, or maybe that was when he just pulled up, because he had to kind of wait out front for a little bit while I finished recording my segment, because I talked so long, because I wanted to do this. And that's literally how I always answer the phone for him. I did not fake this at all, but as I was recording this episode, I actually got a call from him again. He was calling me for some advice. He's trying to help his dad. I actually just hung out with him earlier today too, but he's also right now trying to help his dad buy a new scope for one of his dad's AR-15, so he wanted some advice from me. I answered the phone the exact same way. Hey, what's going on, bro? It's not fake. That's kind of how I always answer the phone, especially with this particular friend who I've known forever. So, like, the reason I was apologizing to first of all, it was just kind of an almost a mindless thing. I'm a filmmaker. You don't leave your phone on film sets and when you're recording, but I kind of have to, because I was waiting for a call from him. I have another job that I do that I'm on call for, that I can theoretically get a call for at any time, and kind of have to be ready to run out and do when I get that call. So I had to leave my phone on. So it was like a very, very cursory, oh shoot, sorry, I gotta take this real quick. It's a minor politeness thing. It is perfectly okay and actually good, and really what you should do to treat women politely. That doesn't mean you're some simp or some cuck. It's basic human decency, and especially when it's your wife. Like, dude, you owe that woman a certain level of respect. There's nothing like, this is kind of like in the other video. I don't think I have a clip of this, but Donovan made this big deal that me and Cassie were like recording a video together, and at one point I'm saying something and she like interjects something, and it wasn't even like she was really cutting me off. I think she was interjecting like, oh, and don't forget to tell them about this. And he's like, oh look, he's letting his woman interrupt him. No, that's the normal flow of a civilized conversation. People talk, you can kind of interject at certain moments. You just don't like completely bowl people over and cut them off. And I let her say what she had to say, because she was like reminding me of something, because she wanted to hear what I had to say and was actually so excited to hear what I had to say that she wanted to make sure I didn't forget any of it. But Donovan just turned it into this like, oh look, he's just letting his wife like run all over him, and incredible silliness, guys. This is dumb analysis and a really bad ideology.
I mean, look at this guy. He's got the straight eyebrows, the 5 o'clock shot. Oh, Jesus. Oh, David.
Wait.
Dude, you give me 1 month with this dude. David, listen, real talk. Listen, man to man. You come spend time with me for 1 month. 1 month. And dude, I'll have your girl wearing hoops and heels and drinking all of the kids. You think I'm playing? You think I'm playing? Think I'm playing with you, man. Oh my goodness.
I don't really get this. Donovan at some points in the back of his episodes has like a sign that says like, I make her wear heels and hoops or something like that. And I just don't really get it. I don't like, this seems to be, this isn't a very serious point. We're just going to kind of talk personal taste here. But it seems to be like a very juvenile standard of beauty that a lot of these guys have. I mean, even how they seem to value like age, like, oh, the younger better, younger's better. It's like, dude, sometimes 19-year-old girls are only attractive because they're young, and their skin is nice because of that, and they haven't got fat yet, but they have tons of fat potential, and 10 years from now they'll be hideous. And other women who maybe they just look kind of average when they're in high school, just because they're not like dressing up and stuff. You realize later when they're 40 years old, you're like, wow, she aged amazingly. And you realize, well, she did have great bone structure. She never had fat potential. She stayed thin. She had good muscle tone. Like, there's a lot more that goes into even just physical beauty than youth. And these guys just have like, it's like the kind of like standards of beauty I had when I was like, junior high or early high school years, where I remember in high school, I would think like, oh man, there's only like 3 hot girls in my whole class. And now I look around and I'm like, was I retarded? Like, there's a lot more women that are attractive than like, 5 or 10% of them. There's, and it's not that my standards have lowered. It's that I've just gotten better at identifying what's attractive. So like, I kind of get the heel thing. I'm totally like a leg and butt guy. If you've ever seen pictures of my wife that show her like her legs or her butt, you will understand. So like, dude, I totally agree that like heels, the way they kind of make a woman's calves pop looks really attractive. But even then, I'm like, oh, like a real classy, like open-toed heel or something, kind of strappy, like something that looks really nice and classy, like she'd be going down the red carpet. And then Donovan, his taste seems to be like, oh, here's like a 3-inch thick plastic clear stripper heel. Oh, isn't she sexy? And I'm like, how does that make her sexier? I don't get it, because it's not even just like it's popping her calf up. It's like he actually thinks that stripper shoes are sexy. And the hoop earrings thing, I just don't get it at all. I could probably have married a woman and not even realized her ears weren't pierced, because I just like don't give a shit. That's just not my thing. It's just like really interesting. Like, it seems like these guys confuse sluttiness with hotness, which is bizarre to me. And it makes me feel like I said, they have a very juvenile standard of beauty. Like, to them, they're like, oh, look at that girl in that mini skirt. Isn't she super hot? And they're thinking that because the skirt is shorter, it makes her hotter. And I'm like, I mean, sure, you can see her legs better. I'm never going to really complain about seeing a woman's legs if they're nice. But to be frank, I'm not really attracted to sluttiness. I like more conservative dressing women. I like a girl that'll go out and just wear like jeans and a t-shirt to go shoot guns or something. Or I like women like my wife who wear like long flowing dresses. Like, you don't need a mini skirt to see what a woman's packing, if you know what I mean. I can tell how nice a woman's legs are just by seeing her ankles. I can tell, how nice a woman's butt is by the way that her very conservative dress falls over the shape of her butt. It's not that hard if you have like more adult refined tastes. You don't need to be spoon-fed. Oh, look, she has nice legs because I can see all the way up to her crotch because of her mini. You don't need that. Like, it's like junior high boys that need that think, oh, the only girls that are hot are like the really slutty ones who, are like, I'm sure, dude, and Donovan, you should know this. Like, don't you look outside right now and see, like what's being considered beautiful by like all the Zoomer gen people, where it's like these freaking caterpillars painted on their forehead. It looks retarded, but all the young guys are like, oh man, that's so hot, just because they've been like spoon fed to think that that's hot by Instagram and the media. They're not even really looking at what the woman's naturally working with, her bone structure, her muscle tone, her fat potential or lack thereof. I don't know. I'm probably talking way more than I need to about this fairly trivial point, but it just consistently surprises me. Like, I don't get why you think sluttiness is attractive. I like a conservative woman. I like a woman who has some modesty. Like, I get to see my wife naked. So why do I need to see her in miniskirts and stuff to think that she's attractive? Like, I know exactly what she looks like, and I think she looks better when she's being modest. But basically, whatever you call these guys, they constantly make these, they're really just no true Scotsman arguments. The no true Scotsman fallacy is the idea that someone says like, that Scottish person murdered a guy. And someone says, oh, well, no true Scotsman would do that, so he's not a Scotsman. And basically, it's just a way to deflect and ignore people who are inconvenient to your argument. So like in this instance, we have people basically saying things like, no real man who makes over $100,000 a year would ever date a woman in her mid-30s with a kid. Yeah, whatever. And then
say what?
Point to all these examples of men who are very wealthy and the heads of companies and clearly have some leadership abilities and are.
Okay, David, point to these men. Point to these men who are titans of the industry, making all this money, who are wiping up women in their mid-30s who have kids. Point to those, David. If there's so many men that are inconvenient to our argument, I want to know. You know what? Because it's so commonplace, David, I want 10. I want 10 verified six-figure dudes who met and wiped up women in their mid-30s with children. I want 10, David. I'm not kidding. You can say whatever you want. Point to these. Point to who?
Point to who? Okay, well, let's respond to that here. I got a little document I wrote up that I am going to read to you guys now. You wanted 10 men? Here's 10 men. Number 1. In October 2020, 38-year-old Saturday Night Live performer Colin Jost married 36-year-old twice-divorced Scarlett Johansson, who has a 6-year-old daughter. Number 2. In 2005, 26-year-old Jason Momoa of Baywatch, Aquaman, and Game of Thrones fame got with 37-year-old Lisa Bonet, whose daughter Zoe Kravitz was 16 years old at the time. They are now married and have 2 children of their own. Number 3. 45-year-old A-Rod, the richest baseball player in the world by a wide margin, has been with 51-year-old mother of 2 J-Lo for the last 4 years. They were supposed to marry this year in 2020, but delayed their wedding on account of COVID. Number 4. In May 2017, 26-year-old Snapchat multi-billionaire Evan Spiegel married 34-year-old model Miranda Kerr, who had a then 6-year-old son with ex-husband Orlando Bloom. Number 5. In 2015, just 1 year after being named People magazine's hottest bachelor, 38-year-old Joe Manganiello, I can never say that dude's name, married 43-year-old actress Sofia Vergara, who had an adult son from a previous marriage. Number 6. In 2016, 27-year-old Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson married 30-year-old singer Ciara, who had a 2-year-old son from a previous relationship. They now have 2 more children together. Fun fact, they didn't have sex until they were married. Although, as my wife has now informed me, apparently Donovan knows that because he talks about Russell Wilson all the time, apparently. Number 7. Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn have been together since 1983. When they got together on the set of the Jonathan Demme film Swing Shift, he was 32 and she was 37 with a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. They have another son together, and Hawn's eldest children have a far better relationship with Russell than they do with their biological father. Number 8. In 1996, 36-year-old Zorro actor Antonio Banderas married 39-year-old actress Melanie Griffith, who had children from both of her ex-husbands, an 11-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. They have another child together, and Banderas is very close to his stepkids. Number 9. In 2002, Indiana Jones and Han Solo actor Harrison Ford began his long-term relationship, now a marriage, with then 36-year-old actress Callista Flockhart. She had become a single mother the previous year when she adopted her son, Liam. Once their relationship became serious, Ford officially became Liam's adoptive father. And number 10. In 2011, Jim Toth, a tall, wealthy 41-year-old talent agent who represents stars as big as Scarlett Johansson and Matthew McConaughey, married 35-year-old actress Reese Witherspoon, who had a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son with her ex-husband. There you go, Donovan. 10 men. Number 11. In 1991, 44-year-old billionaire film director Steven Spielberg married 37-year-old actress Kate Capshaw, who had a 15-year-old daughter from a previous marriage, as well as a 3-year-old son named Theo. Spielberg adopted Theo as well. The two have now been married for nearly 30 years and have had 3 more children together, as well as adopted another child together. Number 12. In 2017, 30-year-old Gossip Girl and U star Penn Badgley married 33-year-old Domino Kirk, a relative nobody who had a 7-year-old son from her previous marriage. After several miscarriages, they recently welcomed another son. Number 13. In 1995, 48-year-old Cheers star Ted Danson married 42-year-old actress Mary Steenburgen, who had a 12-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter with her ex-husband. Number 14. Tina Turner was a 46-year-old divorced single mother with biological children from 2 different men and 2 adopted children from her previous marriage when wealthy German record label executive Erwin Bach began a long-term relationship with her in 1986. Bach, who is worth an estimated $50 million today, was only 30 at the time. They've been together nearly 35 years and are now married. Number 15. In March 2020, 39-year-old actress Michelle Williams married 42-year-old Hamilton director Thomas Kail. Williams was previously divorced and had a 14-year-old daughter with her late boyfriend Heath Ledger. Williams and Kail have since given birth to a child. Number 16. In October 2020, 44-year-old country music superstar Blake Shelton, People magazine's 2017 Sexiest Man Alive, got engaged to his girlfriend of 5 years, 51-year-old singer Gwen Stefani. Stefani has 3 sons from her previous marriage, ages 6 to 14. Number 17. In the year 2000, James Cameron, arguably the greatest action film director of all time, married 38-year-old actress Susie Amos. Amos had a 10-year-old son with her ex-husband. Cameron had directed the highest-grossing film of all time, Titanic, less than 3 years earlier. This was actually the second time Cameron had committed to a single mother in her mid-30s with a young child. Though of his 5 marriages, this is the only one that seems to have actually worked, as Cameron and Amos have now been married over 20 years and have 3 children together. Number 18. In 2018, 33-year-old British actor Jack Donnelly married 40-year-old actress Malin Ackerman. Ackerman had a 5-year-old son from her previous husband. Number 19. In 2018, prolific 47-year-old television writer and producer Brad Falchuk married 46-year-old actress Gwyneth Paltrow. She had a son and a daughter from her previous marriage, ages 12 and 14. And number 20. In 2011, the current James Bond himself, then 43-year-old British actor Daniel Craig, married then 41-year-old actress Rachel Weisz when her son Henry was 5 years old. And now, just to highlight the fact that apparently virtually everyone who's ever touched the James Bond franchise has married a single mom, let's add a few more to this list. I've already doubled what you asked for. Number 21. In 1980, then 27-year-old Pierce Brosnan, who went on to play James Bond in 4 films throughout the 90s and early 2000s, married 32-year-old actress Cassandra Harris. She had a 9-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son from a previous marriage. Brosnan eventually adopted her 2 children and had another son with her. They were married until she died of cancer in 1991. Number 22. In 1975, original James Bond actor Sean Connery married Michelle Roquenbrune. He was 44, she was 46, and had 3 children from her 2 ex-husbands. Connery had previously married 29-year-old actress Diane Salento when he was 32. She had a 5-year-old daughter with her previous husband. Connery spent 12 years with her, and they had 1 child of their own. So Sean Connery married 2 single moms. Number 23. Iconic second James Bond actor Roger Moore also married 2 women with children. At 19, he married a 25-year-old woman with a young son who had been born out of wedlock. In 2002, the 75-year-old Moore married his 62-year-old 4th wife, who had 2 adult children from her first marriage. Number 24. James Bond actor Timothy Dalton was in a long-term relationship with actress Vanessa Redgrave for 15 years from 1971 to 1986. When they got together, he was 26 and she was 34. She had 3 children, aged 2, 6, and 8, from her 2 ex-husbands. And finally, number 25. Even famed film mogul and father of the cinematic James Bond franchise, Albert R. Broccoli, married 2 different single moms. In 1951, at the age of 41, he married 32-year-old Nedra Sanders, who had 2 young children, one with each of her ex-husbands. They had 2 more children and were married until her untimely death in 1958. Less than 1 year later, at the age of 50, the accomplished film producer married again, this time to 37-year-old Dana, who had a teenage son named Michael with her ex-husband. Albert was married to Dana until his death in 1996. They had 1 more child together, and Albert spent the last 2 decades of his life training up his stepson Michael to follow in his footsteps as a film producer and steward of the James Bond franchise. You asked for 10. There's 24 just for good measure, and that's without even getting into all the high-value men who married single mothers in their 20s, like Matt Damon, who at the age of 35 married a 29-year-old divorced bartender with a 7-year-old daughter. They've now been married 15 years and have 3 more children. Or Billy Ray Cyrus, who in 1993 married a 26-year-old single mother with 2 kids a year after Achy Breaky Heart made him a superstar. Then there's the more immoral examples of this, like richest man in the world Jeff Bezos leaving his wife of more than 25 years for a married woman with 3 kids 6 months older than his previous wife. Or 48-year-old Prince Charles leaving beautiful young Diana, 13 years his junior, for a married woman a year older than him with 2 kids of her own. And of course, if you set aside the single mother aspect of all of this, the list of highly eligible celebrity bachelors who married women in their 30s, often who are even older than they are, is basically endless. In fact, it's weirdly almost the norm for Hollywood's most stable and long-lasting relationships that the woman was in her 30s or older when they got married. For example, Christian Bale married a 30-year-old woman when he was 26. 20 years later, they're still married and have 2 kids. When Chris Hemsworth was 27, he married 34-year-old actress Elsa Pataky. They just celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary and have 3 kids together. 27-year-old Hugh Jackman married 41-year-old actress Deborah Lee Furness in 1996. They're still married and have 2 kids. Denzel Washington got married when he was 28. His wife was almost 33. They've been married 37 years and have 4 children. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson were both going on 32 when they got married. 32 years and 2 children later, they're still together. Now, just in case some of you want to try to contest whether or not these are high-value men, let's look at some things. The average height of the men on this list, at least the 25 who married single mothers, I didn't include anyone else on this. Of those 25, I could find heights online for 24 of them, and their average height is 6 feet and 1/2 of an inch, which is about 3.5 inches taller than the average man. And their average net worth is about $670 million, which admittedly is pretty skewed by a bunch of like several billionaires and a bunch of like mega stars on there. But even if we take out everybody who was making over 100 million on that list, we are still left with an average net worth of nearly $27 million. The lowest net worth on the list is still $4 million. I don't think there's really any way that you can't say that these are high-value men. These are all incredibly successful men. They are mostly quite tall. Many of them are like heartthrob action star types. We have basically every noteworthy James Bond. We have Indiana Jones and Han Solo. We have Aquaman. We have professional athletes. We have Joe Manganiello, who's like a cartoon caricature of a man. We have multiple Sexiest Man Alive winners from major publications like People. Like, guys, these are high-value men. And honestly, it wasn't very hard to put this list together. That's why I just kept going. And that's why I did, weird stuff like, oh, look, everyone in the James Bond universe basically is married a single mom. If you just go Google like celebrity stepdads or something, you'll find kind of the same list of like 8 or 10 people over and over and over. And it's always like whoever is super popular at the time and is like the most tabloid friendly, the most tabloid fodder type person. And it might give you the impression that, oh, there's not really that many of these like ultra high value guys doing this. That's why they're repeating the same ones. But that's not the case. All that I did to compile this list after I'd got, 8 or 10 from Googling that sort of listicle or whatever you'd call it, I just started, looking stuff up. I'd look up, celebrity single moms, and then I'd type in a date, like 2012. And when an article from 2012 popped up, I would go through those actresses, and what do you know? Almost all of them in their 30s had since gotten remarried again, and that gave me a whole bunch more people to add to this list. Then I just started looking up random people. I'd look up like directors that I like. I'd look up movies that I like, and I'd click on people who were involved in it. And what do you know? You just start finding people who married single moms. Like, it's obviously not the majority, but it's a pretty significant chunk. It's this idea that this doesn't happen is absurd. And remember, it's really hard to Google random people. That's why these people are all basically all celebrities or are married to celebrities. because I can't just Google, oh, 6-figure men who married single moms. How would you ever find that? You can't find information like that about random people. But if it's this common with these like mostly super tall, ultra rich Hollywood movie stars and professional athletes and musicians, like why would you think it isn't even more common probably when we're looking at just average people? I mean, even in my like, extended friend and acquaintance group, I know plenty of people who married like single moms. I know like guys who are like multimillionaires who like one of my good friends, his wife's stepdad married her mom. He's like 4 years older than her. They got married when he was like in his early 50s. She was in her late 40s. He's like a super successful local businessman. He's definitely worth, I bet he's worth over $10 million. I mean, I've seen like his houses. I've seen some of the stuff he has. Like this dude is very, very wealthy. Um, Married like a totally age appropriate mom with several children. It's not at all unheard of. I could come up with plenty of examples of that. To be frank, I could probably kind of put myself on this list. If you guys didn't know, Cassie was a single mom. She had our daughter Scarlett already when I met her. I was 25. She was 29. Now, she had not had her daughter, our daughter, out of wedlock. She'd been stupid, but she hadn't been like a whore. Long story short, I'll spare you all the details, but basically, when Cassie was about 25, 26 years old, she started freaking out and realizing, holy crap, I want to have a kid. I'm getting old. I need to have kids. And she met a guy who she thought was everything that she wanted. And they got married in like 2 months. And she got pregnant within a month after that. And then within a few months of getting pregnant, found out a whole bunch of stuff that she did not know. So she got an annulment, and then she was a single mom. The guy was never in the picture. He never met our daughter. He never saw her, never tried to, nothing like that. Cassie just went on her way and was a single mom for a couple years. I had a few boyfriends in the meantime. I actually, really seemed to have no problem being pursued by very eligible men. And then I ended up meeting her and we clicked. And dude, to be frank, I was 25 years old. I was finally starting to at least make a little bit of money doing my filmmaking thing. I mean, I was, like I said earlier, I was poor basically, but I was definitely going somewhere. I've never had any problem talking to girls. I've never had any problem, getting women interested in me. Finding a woman who's worth settling down with or who isn't like terrified away by my political beliefs when she gets to know me. It's a little different story, but I never had any problem talking to girls or getting them interested in me. So, dude, I'm not going to lie. Like for a second, when we first kind of started dating, I was like, I do really like this girl. She checks off basically every box. We share so many beliefs. Like, I know this is a woman that I could truly like be myself around. I wouldn't have that temptation to like self-censor and limit my kind of radical libertarian, anarcho-capitalist political beliefs. And I liked all that. But there was a part of me that was like, she's 4 years older than me and a single mom. Do I want to do this? And I kind of debated it for a while. And ultimately what I realized was that one, because of her situation, there wasn't a baby daddy in the picture. If there had been, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have considered her, at least not particularly seriously. And that would have been unfortunate. I would have missed out on something good. But, obviously a lot of other people, maybe people who wouldn't have as many options as me, would have been more willing to overlook that. But for me, it was like, okay, so there's no baby daddy. It's almost more like being with like a widow, only without even the baggage of a widow, where you might have to be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Your husband died and you really loved him, but like, I'm your new husband. Can you stop talking about him? Can you stop, I don't want to live in this guy's shadow. So none of that baggage. So obviously she didn't like the guy at this point. But also none of the baggage of typical like single mom, baby daddy stuff. So I guess it's a little different circumstance. And then the other thing was that I realized I really loved our daughter, or, now our daughter, now that I've adopted her and everything. And And I realized, okay, I'm not going to be a stepdad. I'm going to be like an adoptive father. And being an adoptive father's like, that's wonderful. You know, as a Christian, we believe that we're all, at least those of us who are saved, are adopted into God's family. God only has one begotten son, and that's Jesus. The rest of us who become like his, children or whatever are adopted. So adoption is a wonderful thing. I had always, my entire life, known that if I ever had kids, and I realize now I should have probably wanted kids a lot earlier than I did. I'd always known I wanted to adopt a couple kids. Cassie had too. So even when we first started talking, we knew we were going to adopt more kids in the future. So I was always going to be an adoptive father. And, to me, obviously many stepdads fill a void in a kid's life and are oftentimes the better parent. Not always. There's plenty of, times where the stepdad sucks, or where both the real dad and the stepdad are kind of similar. But, I was glad I wouldn't have to be a stepdad. I just got to be an adopted dad, which is beyond the act of making the child the exact same thing as being a dad. You're raising that child. You're the only thing they've ever known, the only thing they will ever know. So that definitely played a role in me choosing her. And as far as the age thing goes, one thing that I realized, I was like, well, shoot, I never really thought about this before, but since I know she'll bounce back to being thin after having a kid, I know she's not going to get fat, because I'd seen a lot of girls that I'd gone to high school with who, I guess had been attractive, and now it was like, gained some weight there. So I knew that wasn't going to be an issue with Cassie. I knew she'd bounce back after having a baby. That was a major plus. Like, I'd rather have a woman 4 years older than me who's always going to be thin and attractive than a woman 4 years younger than me who's, going to be fat by the time we're in our late 20s and she's had a kid or two. The other thing was Cassie's mom is very attractive. So I'm like, oh, shoot, this is what you're going to look like when you're 50? Like, yeah. I mean, we have to have, like, whenever my mother-in-law visits our house, I have to stop, like, slapping my wife on the butt when I walk by, because from the back, they look exactly the same. And I got to be, I don't want to accidentally slap my mother-in-law on the butt, obviously. So in my personal situation, I realized, you know what? I do have a lot of options. I could totally have a woman who's childless, but I just felt like the odds of me meeting a woman who I clicked as well with, who shared as many of my values, and who appreciated my vision and was willing to, frankly, be with me before I made it big, be willing to be with me when I was like, yeah, I'm poor. I'm like going from like tiny underpaying freelance job to tiny underpaying freelance job. I didn't think there was much chance of me finding another woman who could do that in, any kind of reasonable time frame. So I chose to be with Cassie. And there were times where, because we're both very opinionated people, even though we share tons of beliefs, there can be times where we have, minor theological squabbles about, Bible type stuff. A lot of you guys would be like, what? But trust me, the fact that I would consider myself a Reformed Calvinistic Baptist and she would consider herself a independent fundamentalist Baptist, sometimes we butt heads over that. And there were times where your guys are like, what? That sounds like no difference at all. What are you even talking about? And so there would be times where I would think, should I break up with her and try to find a woman who's even closer in alignment to me ideologically? And honestly, what usually would be like, no, I want this. A lot of times the deciding factor would be how much I had come to love our daughter. And I'd realize no, I want to be her dad. I have to be her dad. This is really good. And I'd be like, these minor things we can get over. There's always going to be some kind of problem with whoever you're with. But let's get back to watching some of these clips here. Alpha type men.
He doesn't even believe. He's an alpha type. No. A man who makes $100,000 a year, David, that's not an alpha. A man who makes $100,000 a year and wipes up a woman in her mid-30s with a kid, it's not alpha, David.
Just to refresh you guys what I'm talking about here, because I know I just talked for a lot about the men who married single moms. What I was talking about in this clip earlier is I was talking about how these guys make no true Scotsman arguments. Pay very close attention to what Donovan just said, what I'm about to say, and his response to that.
It's not alpha.
You are doing those things. You are dating women in their mid-30s who have kids and stuff. And then those men come back and they say, well, he's doing that, so he's not a real man. It's like this circular.
No. Oh, David. Oh, David.
Donovan, you just made the exact, to a T, no true Scotsman argument that I kept accusing Manosphere types and your followers of making. And I think you realized it. And, I don't want to try to get too much into like the body language and reading too much into stuff, since I keep kind of discrediting that. But I think that's the reason that all you have to say is, oh, David, no. You realize what you just stepped in. You realize that I was describing the argument you ended up making before you actually even made it. Are you really just going to blow off that entire list of like 25 guys that I just read? Are you going to say that, those guys, they're not really alpha type men? No, you're not going to say that. You're not going to say that, the guys that play James Bond aren't high value men. You're not going to say that Matt Damon isn't a high value man. Like, this is absurd. That's stupid. I think that men that like pursue significantly younger women are losers. I think it's really stupid. I mean, statistics bear out that relationships with giant age gaps fail all the time.
It's like a 99% divorce rate. It's insane.
Yeah, it's at least in the 90s. Like when you get like 20-year gaps and stuff, the relationships that are the most successful are people that are like within 5 years of each other. So, since Donovan is about to contest the idea that large age gap relationships are more likely to end in divorce, let's look at some numbers on that. So this is an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution going over some analysis that someone did of data compiled by Emory University about divorce and marriage and age and stuff. Now, if you go to like the original source where this came from, this guy, what's his name? Randall Olson, who analyzed these numbers from Emory, he kind of retracted it and basically said that the researchers who'd done the original study felt like you couldn't actually, as accurately as he thought, come to the conclusion of how much more likely a divorce was given the ages of people in this study. I'm not 100% sure why they said that, but that doesn't mean that there's no validity to this. That doesn't mean that these numbers aren't worth looking at. As far as I know, I haven't been able to find many other studies that show exactly this, but I feel like we all kind of know that what they're saying is true. And there was a reason that they were able to come to these percentages, and that is that the numbers did show much higher rates of divorce with older couples. So let me just read you some of this now that I've prefaced that. Randall Olson is the one who analyzed the stats from Emory, making a graph that shows couples with a 5-year gap in age are 18% more likely to divorce, and those with a 30-year gap in age are a whopping 172% more likely to divorce. But even just being 1 year apart puts you at a 3% higher divorce rate, I guess, than people who are essentially the same age. Maybe people who went to school together or something. Internationally, the male partner is on average 2.4 years older than the female. In 67% of relationships, the male is older than the female, compared to 20% where the female is older and 13% where the partners are the same age. I think those numbers were taken from some analysis Facebook did of the data that they collect, since they obviously collect tons on us. The Emory study also noted staying together longer increased your odds of not divorcing. Couples that had been together 5 years are 76% less likely to head to divorce court. So there you go. It's pretty obvious. People who get divorced are more likely to do it very early in the marriage. Marriages that last a reasonable amount of time are much more likely to survive. People generally marry others who are within a few years of their age, generally with the man a couple years older than the woman. And divorce statistics wise, the bigger the age gap is, the more likely it is to end in divorce. This really should not be a surprise. Like, guys, try to refute this. And I know you can try to say, oh, maybe these exact numbers aren't completely accurate. Totally open to that. you can't just completely discredit them and say that, oh, they're not wrong at all. The opposite is true. Older men marrying young women is the best. It's not. That's not the best kind of marriage. The best kind of marriage, statistically, is clearly people who are pretty close in age and have kind of similar life experiences and beliefs. But let's get back to analyzing this clip here.
Oh my God. David, listen, man, when you need help, you know where to find me, man. I promise. I'm being serious. I'm not gonna. Hey, David, Wes finally reached out to me. Cassie cheated on him. No, real talk, man. Because I think David's a good guy, man. I think he's a good guy he's the typical American male. He really kind of is, and he's a good-looking guy, so he probably got a lot of attention.
People who are peers, people have the same life experiences. People could have gone to high school together.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I never understood the appeal.
Personally,
like you'll run into some of these gross, like pervy guys who are always like, "Oh yeah, like the hottest women are like 18 or 19." Or
who the hell sits around talking about the hottest women are 18 and 19? And I got news for you. David. The hottest women are 18 and 19. We don't sit around. He's trying to make us sit a little bit. Oh, yeah, no, 18, 19. Oh God, come on.
I'm sorry, I'm going to completely disagree with that. I truly don't think the hottest women are 18 and 19. There are plenty of very beautiful 18 and 19-year-olds, but shoot, I mean, one of the most beautiful women in the world, one of those beautiful actresses, I would have to say, is Margot Robbie. The thing that was so crazy about Margot Robbie was when she was in Wolf of Wall Street, where she obviously made it big. I mean, if you watch that, you're like, holy crap, this is like the most impossibly beautiful woman I've ever seen. It was crazy because she was only like 21 or 22 when that was filmed, but she looked like a really hot 30-year-old. Frankly, when younger women are the hottest, it's when they kind of have that ageless quality where you almost think they're a much older and more sophisticated woman than they really are. Personally, I don't know. Maybe you prefer more the teenage, like baby fat look. I don't.
Come on.
What? Like, you're like 35, bro. Like, why do you think
30? Oh my God. Now we're talking about a 16-year age gap?
That's a big age gap. Like, that's a child. Like, the youngest.
No, David. That is no. Now we got to correct his ass. See, now you're starting to swim into dangerous territory. An 18 and 19-year-old girl, David, that's not a child, dude. That is an adult. The reason why they're called minors, and let me give you sort of a law lesson.
I don't think this is
most people alive are 18 years or older. This is why they are called the age of majority. If you are in the age of minority, 0 to 17, you are called a minor. An 18 and 19-year-old woman, that's not a child. That is not a child. That is a grown woman who is legally bound to contracts, who can vote, who can then smoke. Don't try to spin this narrative. Oh, well, she is a child. No, David, she is not a child, my friend. She is not a child. Do not do that.
It's funny that like they're so mad at me for saying this because as a lot of principled libertarians like myself know, people can get really crazy about the issue of like age of consent and stuff. I can't even tell you how many times I have had conversations with liberals where, they're saying some 17-year-old boy sleeps with some 25-year-old high school teacher. And the liberals are like, oh, this was abuse. This was disgusting. And I'm like, it was immoral. It was unprofessional. But like, dude, nothing criminal happened. These are people that are basically within a normal age range of each other for dating. This is why you just probably shouldn't have young women teaching, young men, and why you probably shouldn't send your kids to public school in the first place. I'll say that, and they're like, "Oh, you're just a creep who wants to sleep with teenage girls," and it's like, what? Like the minute, and I'll make that same argument the other way too. When a 16-year-old girl sleeps with some, even 30-year-old, 40-year-old teacher, I'm usually like, dude, we trust her to drive a car on the road, taking people's lives into her hands. Like, she should be considered an adult. And the liberals or people are always like, oh, are you a pedo? And I'm like, guys, my wife is older than me. I'm not into teenagers. But in principle, I understand that, for one thing, age of consent is completely arbitrary. That's part of why I think that the guys that like salivate over 18 and 19-year-olds are kind of creepy, because to me, they're not just salivating over a woman because she's hot. They're not just salivating over a woman they'd actually be interested in. They're basically just salivating over them because they're barely legal. And I always feel like the barely legal thing is enticing to them. And it's like, okay, if it was 16, would you be salivating over 16 and 17-year-olds? If it was 14, would you be salivating over 14 and 15-year-olds? Like, where does it stop? Whereas, look, there's nothing wrong with a 30-year-old man thinking an 18-year-old's hot at all. There isn't. Frankly, most of the time, there's nothing wrong with a 30-year-old man thinking a 16-year-old is hot, because usually with normal people, if a 30-year-old man sees a 16-year-old girl and thinks she's hot, he's probably thinking she's older. He's probably thinking she's in her early to mid 20s because of how much more developed she is, because of how she carries herself, because of how she acts. And you try to make these arguments, and immediately liberals just assume the worst of you. You guys are kind of doing like the same thing here, but the opposite. You're assuming that because I'm saying, no, it's a child, I just want to lock people up for statutory rape. No, like there's a whole lot of statutory rapists who probably never should have gotten in trouble. Not even probably. There are people who got in trouble for statutory rape who got married and have families, and now they're on the sex offender registry because, when they were 5 or 6 years older than their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, they got, like, dude, that's absurd. That's wicked, frankly. Not that those people should be fornicating, but to punish them that way, despicable, truly despicable. So no, I'm not saying they're children in a legal sense. I'm just saying that as an immature human being, most of the time, I understand there are exceptions. My mom and dad were like 8 years apart. But we'll get to that in a second here, because that's going to come up. So I understand that exceptions happen. My mom's an exceptionally mature person for age. I'm sure that she was an exceptionally mature teenager. Knowing her now, I'm sure she was not at all a dumb, flighty young girl. But dude, you guys all think it's like virtue signaling. I'm telling you, if I was single right now, I mean, I would not be like going out of my way to pursue any woman under like 25. They're just, so many, especially because of the way that feminism is. Not that, if it happened with a nice girl from church or something, I wouldn't be like totally opposed to it or anything. That's not what I'd be seeking out. That's not what I'd be putting on like my age range of online dating profiles. I wouldn't be like, I want to date 18, 19, 21-year-olds. No. Those women are the most secularized. They are the ones that want to go out and be crazy. They're the ones that you don't really know if they're going to have tons of fat potential or not yet. I mean, Donovan, you can say that 18 and 19-year-olds are the most attractive all you want, but you're not even living by that. To your credit, frankly. It makes me have more respect for you that you aren't. Your girlfriend, Devin, what is she, 36, 37? You're 42 or 43? Like, you're with a completely age-appropriate woman who is clearly more than a bimbo. She helps you like run your show. She seems intelligent. She seems savvy. You guys seem like you actually have like a real friendship and connection. So why are you telling other people, instead of for trying to pursue what you have, which seems to work fairly well for you, why are you encouraging them to like chase like the youngest, hottest women that they can? As if things like personal compatibility and friendship and values and beliefs don't matter when they obviously do. Anyway, the point is that I don't think that 18 and 19-year-olds and early 20-somethings are children in like a legal sense. I don't think it's pedophilia. I don't think it should be illegal. I don't even think it should be like something that's totally ruled out. I just think that if that's what you're going out of your way to pursue, you are probably being skeezy, or you are unbelievably immature, or most likely a combination of the two.
Lorenzo Rock makes a very good point. He says, did David grow up on a farm? He very well may have, man. He might have.
I did not grow up on a farm, but I did grow up basically way out in the mountains in a town with like 300 people, and my dad was a logger. Pretty much all my extended family on my dad's side were in the logging industry.
Mark Armani with the $5 super chat says he doesn't know, but his wife, knows there are 20-year-old girls giving him IOIs whenever he hangs out with his family. She's trying to get him invested. Real talk. Dude, real talk, man. Like dude, she sees girls looking at this dude. She's like, oh shit.
And I completely know this. Not only do I completely know that women check me out, because I've noticed as I've gotten to like my late 20s and to 30, yes, I did notice that I get more interest from women, partly because I'm older and, visibly older. I look more like a man and less like a boy. Um, and part of that just makes me look literally better than I used to. And part of it is just that it puts me more in the range where there's going to be more women who would potentially be interested in me. But dude, I'm well aware of the fact I don't even wear a wedding ring, guys. This has come up like multiple times in the streams. Like, why isn't he wearing a wedding ring? I think it's uncomfortable. I don't like jewelry. It's obnoxious. I've tried like the rubber ones, even. It's stupid. I'm not gonna wear one. And I'm not gonna do a tattoo either because those tattoos are dumb. I don't want to mark up my body. I think that's stupid. So, I just don't wear one. So yeah, I mean, women are probably a little more likely to mistake me for being single too. Dude, I notice getting checked out all the time by women. I'm well aware that it happens. And I always tell my wife about it because actually she loves to hear about it when I get hit on. Or if we're both out, she'll be like, oh, I think that woman was checking you out. Especially seeing me probably with like kids and stuff. Women are more likely like, wow, that guy's like a good provider. He's a good dad. That's cool. I know I get it all the time. My wife will point out women that she thinks are like eyeing me and stuff. It's it's so funny. Just the level of analysis is so bad. I don't know why you guys like think you know so much more than you really do.
Kevin Samuels says, yet
Oh boy.
his father met his mother when she was 17 and he was 24. What would that be legally, David? If you required or needed parental consent in your family tree, you should think twice before speaking. Wow. Kevin's pulling genealogy records. Yeah, that is a child. Really? Well, then you might want to have a conversation with your father about what may or may not have happened legally or otherwise.
Nothing illegal happened. I promise you that. So Kevin Samuels got this little nugget from when I appeared on Jessica X, some bizarre Manosphere adjacent female YouTuber who seems to be claiming to be an attractive mid-20s black lady, but all you ever hear of her is a British accent. So who knows what she really is? I personally suspect that she's significantly older and fatter than she portrays herself to be, and may well not even be black. I don't know. I think she's just a grifter, but it's very weird that Kevin Samuels paid enough attention to that to catch me saying this on that stream. I was just on that stream, people were like, oh, do you think it's like terrible to have an age gap? And I was like, no, it can be fine. My parents had a relatively big age gap. My dad was like 8.5 years older than my mom. When they met, she was 16, just a couple months out from 17, and he was 24. So, I obviously am very happy to be here. My parents had a great marriage. The only reason I say had past tense is because my mom is widowed. My dad died in a logging accident when I was 13. They'd been married for 16 years, had 4 children. They would still be married today if he was still alive, obviously. So obviously I think like good things can come from that. My mom was exceptionally mature. My dad had kind of recently become a Christian and was looking to like get married and be serious. And the other serious girlfriend that he'd had before my mom was like a high school sweetheart who was basically his age, who he'd eventually broken up with. So it's not like he was just out specifically chasing like super young girls. Also, we were in the middle of nowhere logging community. So to be frank, there weren't a ton of options. Like he met the pastor's daughter who was cute and young and eligible, and they went for it. And this was in the mid 80s in a very small place. So it was probably more, normal and acceptable then as well. But man, Kevin Samuels is such like a creepy, petty metrosexual. And that's being generous, calling him metrosexual. I mean, have you seen the way this dude dresses? Dude like always has like a purse and talks about shoes like a woman and stuff. I mean, I don't know. Metrosexual's generous to him. But very, very creepy that he like hung on to this. He just, oh, how dare he say this? Like that's the impression I get from him is he's just this very like effeminate, metrosexual guy. He has like this successful big YouTube channel, but he has to be, you know, going after little guys like me with stuff like this. And here's the thing about my parents. Nothing illegal happened. I know some of you are going to say, oh, no, you don't know your mom's dark secrets. You know, no, I'm telling you, my parents waited until they were married. You know, especially once my mom got a little older, I'm sure my dad would not have. My mom has intimated as much. He was a man in his mid to late 20s who he was ready to have sex with his woman. But my mom was adamant, no, they were going to wait till they were married. She wouldn't let it go any farther. She wouldn't let that happen. I promise you, my mom waited until she was married.
This is just off the topic. I met my youngest niece for the first time last night. Dude, she is the cutest little thing. Dude, she's like this big. She's 2 years old. She is my brother's daughter. Oh, she's just oh my goodness. I want to just squeeze those cheeks.
So I'm actually glad you brought this up, Donovan. I don't think it's off topic at all, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. You clearly love your little niece and think she's very cute. Maybe you should have some children of your own. Maybe you and Devin should tie the knot, and you guys should start having some babies while she still can. Look how much you love your niece. Look how cute you think your niece is. Wait until it is like literally the product of your loins. Wait until it's your child. Wait until you're raising them from the moment they come out of the womb. You're already loving the child before you've ever even met him or her. Wait until that happens. You know how much you'd love your own daughter? You know how much you'd love your own son? Like, why don't you have kids? Why are none of you guys trying to have kids? Why isn't like, that's what is crazy to me is it's not, you guys don't even seem to be encouraging, oh yeah, once you're 40, try to wipe off a 20 something and get her pregnant. You just seem to encourage, just keep sleeping around. Where is that going to end for you guys? I'm telling you, you should have children sooner rather than later. Donovan, you've already waited way too long to have kids. Not that, the way a woman loses her fertility, you're really in any danger of doing that. You still have decades in which you could make a kid. But you've waited a long time. If you have any kids at this point, you're going to be what? Pushing 50, late 40s, best case scenario. You're going to be an old dad. You're never going to get to spend any like young quality time with your grandkids. I could easily be a grandparent in my mid to late 40s. I was 22 when my daughter was born. If she has kids at 22, 23, I'll be like 44, 45, mid 40s when I have grandkids. I think that's awesome. My grandkids, I could very easily end up having teenage grandsons when I'm 60. 60 is still a pretty, at least it can be if you take care of yourself, still be a pretty fit age. You still have a lot of vitality as a 60-year-old man. You can still be out hiking and hunting and doing all sorts of stuff. I can be like a badass grandpa who takes, my grandkids hunting. My sons will be old enough to hunt before I'm 40. I will be able to be like a truly just badass at his prime dad going out and teaching my kids stuff. You've already kind of missed out on that, Donovan. If you had kids right now, you'd be what, pushing 60 by the time they were old enough for you to like really take out on adventures like that. Not that you can't still do it, not that it wouldn't still be meaningful, not that you shouldn't still try even at your age, but you've missed a lot of good time. I even sometimes wish that I'd been able to have kids younger. I think it would have been great if I could have got married when I was 19, had my first kid at 21, had my second kid at 23, have 4 or 5 kids already at 30. And being a 30-year-old with 3 kids, I am way ahead of a lot of dudes. I mean, honestly, Donovan, at this point, you're pretty much setting yourself up for the exact same fate that, all the feminists are setting themselves up for, all the feminists who oppose childbearing. Let me show you guys something here. So I am currently nearing the end of a 30-day ban on Facebook for hate speech because I wrote this comment. This was on a picture that a friend of mine posted, a Facebook friend of mine, basically sort of making fun of people who get super butthurt when like their parents and grandparents at Thanksgiving say, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to get married? And it was basically like, dude, grow up. Your family has a right to wonder when you're going to do that. And started this big flame war in the comments. And I wrote this. I wrote, all these lunatic women unironically telling people to die mad about their lack of children while failing to realize that they're setting themselves up for the loneliest death imaginable would be hilarious if it wasn't so damn tragic. I got me banned for hate speech. Facebook ignored my 2 attempts to contest it, and I guess they're just going to let the ban stand. It's like 3 days from ending at this point. Pretty crazy. The digital noose is definitely getting tight. Anyway, the reason I read that to you is because I think you're setting yourself up for the exact same fate that those women are, Donovan, and that is a lonely, miserable death and a very lonely final few years of life. I mean, seriously, what are you going to do when you're in your 70s? When you're in your 80s, if you live that long? When you're even in your 60s? What are you going to do without a family? Are you just, how many people in their 60s just going to have tons and tons of close friends to fill all that, those emotional voids in their life? Are you still going to be chasing women? Are you and Devin going to be together? And if not, like, who are you with now? Like, what are you going to do? I contend that the best thing that you can do for long-term life planning is have children. Have a lot of children. Some liberals love to act like, oh, this is so selfish. This shouldn't be your motivation for having kids. Dude, screw you guys. It's not selfish. Having children is completely selfless. Being a parent is so full of selflessness. Thinking about the benefits that having kids will also offer to me decades down the line is not selfish. It is pragmatic. It is practical. When I am old, I'm going to have children who can take care of me. I'm going to have grandchildren to bring joy to my life. I'm going to be able to spend my final few years with loved ones. Look, I mentioned earlier, I have a job that I'm kind of always on call for. That job is body removal for a morgue. I got it because I work part-time for a moving company sometimes. I moved a new funeral director into his house, and he saw I was a good worker, and he liked me, and was like, hey, we need a dude who's strong enough to lift some stuff. You want to come move some bodies? And I was like, sure. Well, at least I said sure when he told me how much it paid, because it pays reasonably well, given how part-time and limited the actual hours that I do are. It rarely takes more than an hour to remove a body, but it is a fascinating job. I've probably done, 30 to 40 calls since I started doing this in like September, October timeframe. And I've seen some very, very eye-opening things. There are 2 types of calls we get that are the most common. And those 2 types of calls are going and picking up an elderly person, usually in their like late 70s through 80s, who has been on hospice care for a while and has now passed and needs to be picked up and taken to the funeral home for burial or cremation. And the other type of call is people who died of a heart attack or some kind of sudden natural causes and weren't found for a while and were going on the 911 call to pick them up. And here's what I've learned from doing this. The people who are dying on hospice care are dying surrounded by their families. They are next to their wife or their husband, or if, they're already a widow or widower, they are surrounded by their middle-aged adult children. A lot of times when we get there, like the old man has died and the wife was lying in bed holding his hand as he died, and he has his 3 adult children are there, and maybe a 4th adult son is getting there, rushing in from work now that he hears that his dad actually has finally passed. The adult grandkids are starting to show up. Death is not something any of us should ever want, but we all have to die. Why not have a death where you are in as good a position as possible? And even some of the calls where we go on 911 calls for people who died suddenly, we've gone on calls for, men in their mid-80s who just kind of fell over dead one day in the kitchen right in front of their wife. Like, obviously that's a little more traumatic than being on hospice care and knowing it's coming, but that kind of thing is unavoidable. Even that guy, though, he still spent his final day with his wife. His adult children are rushing there because they care about him. They all live in the area, so he's probably been seeing them regularly for years and years and years. having a family really, really, it really makes your life more enjoyable, especially when you get older. And a lot of the calls where people aren't found for a few days, I mean, I picked up people that were a week old or a week or more dead, just decomposing, smelled horrible, hadn't been found until a neighbor wondered where they were. Those people never seem to have families. Um, it'll be like the cops, when we get there to pick up the body, will tell us they've been having trouble locating a next of kin. Oh, she might have a niece in the Midwest, or maybe she has a sister a few states away. Or I've picked up people who have been found by their parents, usually very overweight people. It's another thing this job has really taught me. Being overweight will kill you young. And the two like defining similarities, and this is obviously anecdotal, and I'm not working with a huge sample size, but the two defining similarities between all the people who aren't found for a while is that they have no children, and or if they do, they're estranged from them or whatever, and they are generally a lot younger than the other people. They're also usually overweight. So in my experience, being childless will shorten your lifespan. And not only will it shorten your lifespan, I think it will significantly decrease the quality of your lifespan. Imagine if your final few years of life were just spent being a shut-in who eventually has a heart attack and dies terrified and alone in your own house, when they could have been spent playing with grandkids, going out to dinner with your adult children, spending Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving every year with family, having your adult children come and take care of you. Maybe when you get too old to live alone, you go live with your adult children. Doesn't that sound a whole lot better than just dying alone? Like, you guys got to start planning better. If you're investing, if you're planning for the future in that way, you should also be planning for the future in the biggest way that you can, and that's by having children.
Tom Brokaw says it right here in the chat. Says, this is so sad. A man with good conservative values was turned into a simp. That's right. Like, dude, David is, and he talked about this in the video. He likes to hunt. He likes to fish. He shoots guns. He is the conventionally masculine man. He has been pussified by the female. This is the plight, and oh my God, like,
you guys
David
have been pussified by your own desire for pussy.
Of a true alpha male. He just, dude, the one mistake he made, he committed fully to a woman before he was 35 years old and had slept with at least 35 women.
There it is. Guys, stop acting like you're these red-pilled conservatives. Like, first of all, you got to remember, some of us are Christians. Some of us actually believe that you should be a one-woman man. It's not because I'm pussified. It's not because, I couldn't get other girls. Dude, I'm not going to lie. There's some polygamous warlord in me. Like, you drop me in a place that's uncivilized enough, you make me not a Christian, I will be a benevolent warlord. But I will be a warlord, and when one woman pisses me off, I'll go to my next tent to be with the other woman. Like, I on a carnal level, there's a large part of me, if you catch my drift, that definitely desires that. But I do not believe that will be fulfilling, because I do not believe that it is right. I think it's wrong. I think it's immoral. Like I said, I understand on a carnal level, on a fleshy level, I understand the appeal of that. I understand the appeal of chasing girls. I know I could have got tons of women if I wanted to, but I think that doing the right thing is ultimately more fulfilling. What you are promoting here, Donovan, is degeneracy. Like, don't act like you're the red-pilled, conservative, anti-feminist guy. You are aiding and abetting the sexual revolution. What you are promoting is degeneracy. It is leftism. You are promoting like selfish sexual revolution bullshit. You're not the anti-feminist. The feminists would think that my ideas are a million times more dangerous than yours. Feminists want people to be open and sexual. Feminists want people to sleep around. Feminists don't want fidelity. They don't want monogamy. They don't want people to have children. You are promoting the exact same thing that feminists do. You've just wrapped it up in this faux masculine bow and tried to act like it's something different. But you guys really are just the flip side to feminism. You're just the male side of that coin. Without men sleeping around, without men being weak and not controlling themselves, women couldn't sleep around. I feel like a lot of what these manosphere and pickup artist types promote is fueled by FOMO, the fear of missing out. Like, you guys all seem to know that, at least you know that women being loose is degenerate. You know that it's wrong for women to be sleeping around and stuff, and yet you aid and abet that by sleeping around with them. And it's almost like you know that what I have, like on some subconscious level, you know that what I have, like an actual committed monogamous marriage, a biblical marriage, is better. That's the ideal. But you think, well, that's hard. It's way easier to sleep with women. It's kind of fun in the short term. Women are sleeping around anyway, so I'm just gonna go sleep around with them. Dude, you want to talk about pussified? That's fucking pussified, man. That is, you get me worked up now, but that is so cowardly. Be a man. Be like, I don't care if everyone else is doing it. I don't care if I'm gonna feel like I'm missing out or like, oh, everyone else is doing it. Why shouldn't I join in? I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm not gonna be a fucking coward. I'm gonna go find myself a woman. I'm gonna commit to her. I know it in ways it's gonna be hard. In ways my flesh is gonna feel like it's missing out. But you want to know what the biggest red pill of all is? The biggest reddest pill that there is the blood of Christ. And once you've been washed in it, there's no turning back. You will realize and you will feel horrible about what you've promoted. I hope you find that someday for your own sake. I hope that everyone listening to this repents of their sins, repents of womanizing, turns to Christ, puts their faith in him alone for salvation, and, becomes a Christian, follows Christ, serves the Lord, lives the godliest life that they can, and finds a good, godly woman who they can commit to and have children with. That's my wish for all of you, men out there, be you younger than me or older than me. So going back to the whole thing you said about how you think my biggest mistake was committing to a woman before I was 35 years old and had sex with at least 35 women, I really want to know, why do you say that? Like, do you think I'm missing out? Because I don't really get what I'm missing out on. I've had sex. I get to have sex all the time, pretty much as often as I want. Like, what am I missing out on? You're the one that seems to be missing out to me. You're not getting to experience being a father. You're not getting to experience watching a child grow. You're not getting to experience imparting your ideas onto your own progeny. So how am I the one that's missing out and not you? You may never be a parent. You will, on the trajectory you're on, even if you do become a parent, you'll almost certainly never get to be a grandparent, at least not one who gets to really enjoy their grandkids. I know I kind of talked about all this earlier, but dude, you are missing out on an entire aspect of the human experience. I'm only missing out on getting to have sex with a bunch of women. Don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that thinks that sounds fun. There's a part of me that knows that in the short term, in a fleshy, worldly sense, that would be fun for a short time. Now, once you've been saved, once you've gotten the red pill of the blood of Christ, I promise you would realize that that's not fulfilling. There's an entire book of the Bible about that. King Solomon, who had more women than probably damn near any man in history, he realized in the long run that wasn't fulfilling. That wasn't the meaning of life. He realized that following God, that serving God was what truly mattered. Go read the book of Ecclesiastes sometime and see if you come away from that feeling like pursuing temporary fleshly desires is really what you want to do with your life. Because I promise you that serving the creator of the universe, doing your best to follow him, devoting your life to a woman, and raising children is far more fulfilling than sleeping around with a bunch of women is. Men were sleeping around long before women were.
Oh, David. So the reason why women sleep around is because men have slept around. Is that it? A man sleeping around is just as bad as a woman sleeping around. Or they're the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. And David, if you're watching, you instinctively know that if your wife Cassie were a slut, you probably wouldn't have married her and put 2 babies in her.
I will give you one point here where I'll say you're right. Because on a moral level, I absolutely do think that men sleeping around and women sleeping around is equally wrong. And if you want to go even deeper than that, on a salvific level, when it comes to the eternal destination of one's soul, both sins are more than enough to damn you to hell without the atoning death of Christ, and being washed in his blood and sanctified by him. But I will give it to you that probably, male polygamy is on a purely pragmatic level. Sure, absolutely, I'll give it to you that it can make for a better working society than whatever sexual revolution bullshit we see today. Polyamory and like women sleeping around. Yeah, I get it. Like I said earlier, there's a little bit of polygamous warlord in me. I get that, like, I could probably run a fairly well-functioning society while having, a dozen wives who I've liberated from the post-apocalyptic ashes. I get that. That doesn't make it right, though. Doesn't make it any less wrong just because it works a little bit better. I really do think there is a pretty good argument to be made that from a purely pragmatic point of view, men having multiple wives can lead to a more functioning society than than everyone just sleeping around, than women sleeping around constantly. That doesn't make it any less wrong, and there's still a ton of problems with it, and it will still never be as good as everyone just being in committed monogamous relationships. Sure, it might not be the downfall of society if men have multiple wives, but you know what? It still results in them being not as good of a father. It still results in them creating like rivalries between their different kids. It results in them not being as good of an example to their sons. And all of that eventually leads us to where we are today, because it just doesn't raise as good of kids. And then those kids go on to become, even more messed up. And it's not good for your kids. The best thing for kids is the like nuclear family, father and a mother, and the siblings that they create. That's the absolute best environment for a kid to be raised in. In some ways, having a bunch of wives might be fun and might work okay in certain societal contexts, but dude, you're gonna raise some messed up kids. I promise you, you will not raise as good of kids doing that as you would just being monogamous. So, no, I do not think that these are like fundamentally different things. I think that they just lead to different problems. One just is slightly more stable and does not seek as rapidly to destroy norms. And sure, that can create the illusion of a little bit better society, but they're both bad. We got to where we are now because of the sexual sins of other people and all sorts of sins. Anything short of committed, monogamous, lifelong marriage sows the seeds for future sexual degeneracy. I promise you.
You probably wouldn't have done that. Why? Because you as a man, your masculine hard drive knows that a woman who sleeps around and passes her body around, probably not going to make a good wife and mother. On the other side, a man who sleeps around is considered attractive and a stud because women want men that other women want. That's how it is. Women don't want inexperienced men, David. Virginal men are not attractive to women. Virginal women are attractive to men. A woman who sleeps...
I lost my virginity to my wife. And trust me, I'm sure there's people in the comments section that are going to be like acting like I was some incel or whatever. Donovan, you know that was just from looking at me, talking to me, you know that was very much by choice. There were plenty of women that I could have had sex with. And there's been a time or two when, me saying, no, actually, I want to save sex until marriage has shut some doors for me. That's okay. I don't think I missed out on much. she wasn't wife material. And again, that's not to say like I'm perfect. That's not to say I'm a better person than a lot of people. I can have, I can lust. I can do all sorts of. I've committed sexual sins just like everybody has. But with quality women, I never found being a virgin to be any kind of issue. I've talked to plenty of women who thought that was very cool. And sure, like ideally, would I want to marry a woman who's a virgin? Of course, that would be the ideal, but that doesn't always happen. And as I said earlier, I would rather marry a woman who is committed to chastity and committed to saving sex until marriage than who has, made mistakes and had sex in the past, than I would marry a woman who is incidentally a virgin. I've actually, I've been in both of those situations. I've dated a woman who was incidentally a virgin, only to basically have it end because I wouldn't have sex with her. And I have married a woman who had, made a few mistakes in the past. Not, like I said earlier, not like she was a whore or anything. But yeah, obviously my wife had sex before me. But she did not have a problem at all with the fact that I was a virgin.
Sleeps around as a slut, David. A man who sleeps around as a stud. One lion propagates the herd. One lion puts babies in 17 different lionesses. One lioness, David, doesn't take the sperm from 17 different lions. One mare doesn't take the sperm of 17 different horses. But one stud can impregnate 17 mares. It is the natural way of life. A wise man once said, a key that can open 1,000 locks is a valuable key. A lock that can be opened by 1,000 keys is useless. It is literally the same thing, David. Men who sleep around are not equal to women who sleep around. Women love men who sleep around. Men do not love women who sleep around. Well, fuck them. But we're not wifing those hoes up. Dude, and my guess is to be able to snag a hot wife like that, you are probably a little bit of a player. If a woman finds out, oh, he's a virgin and is waiting to saving himself for marriage, no, not attractive, David.
Like I said, never hurt me. At least not really, not in any meaningful way. Look, here's what I really want to address here. No, Donovan, sex is not literally the same thing as a key that can open a bunch of locks. It's not the same thing as lion prides and stud horses and whatever examples you were giving. We are human beings. We are not animals. Let me show you guys a few Bible verses here. This is Genesis 1:26-28. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." So this is the first time in the Bible that the concept of the image of God, the imago Dei, is brought up. Man is created in the image of God. We are not just the same as all the other animals. We are set apart from them. We are above them. We are better than them. Let me give you an example of just how important the concept of the imago Dei, the image of God, is. This is Genesis 9:6. "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image." This is a foundational verse to an Orthodox Christian worldview. And there's a lot of Christians, unfortunately, that ignore this kind of thing. Like, oh, it's the Old Testament. This verse was specifically set up at the same time as the Noahic covenant, when Noah and his sons and their wives, and Noah's wife, got off the ark. God made this covenant with them, and he told them, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image." And he said that this should apply to all future generations. This is where we get the concept of the death penalty from. The imago Dei, the image of God that all humans bear, is so important that when someone unjustly kills another image bearer of God, they should be put to death. So this is a very serious concept. It's not something that should be taken lightly. And to be frank, when you compare us to animals, you are encouraging animalistic behavior. Sleeping around just repeatedly, acting like we're the same as animals, that is animalistic behavior. You are dehumanizing people. That is wrong. It's despicable. We are not the same. Male, female, human sexual relations are not the same as animal sexual relations are. They just aren't. You cannot take lessons from the animal world and apply them to the human world, especially not on this like one-to-one level. You have to recognize that humans are set apart from the rest of God's creation.
Dude, women were sluts since day one. WTF are you talking about? And then I wrote, both of those lists should end at abstinence. That's the only reproductive right that actually matters.
Okay, David, for real? You're preaching abstinence? Now
Yes, I am. I am preaching abstinence. Christianity has always taught abstinence. That has always been God's ideal design for humanity, is for men and women to be abstinent until they are married to someone of the opposite sex. And don't try to come at me with like, oh, well, Solomon had so many wives and hundreds of concubines and stuff in the Old Testament. Yes, he did. You need to understand that there are parts of the Bible that are prescriptive and parts of the Bible that are descriptive. All the prescriptive parts of the Bible, all the parts of the Bible that are actually telling you what to do and how to behave, tell you to be monogamous. They tell you to save sex until marriage. There are plenty of descriptive parts of the Bible where it will say, yes, this king had many wives. That is not the same as endorsing that and saying that that is right. We also need to remember that while God does give us all a conscience, and so I think a lot of those, kings who were in many ways righteous men, David had an affair with Bathsheba, a married woman, and got her husband killed to cover it up. And it caused a lot of problems for him. But obviously he committed an egregious sexual sin and murdered a man to cover it up. And he was called the man after God's own heart. He was very much what we would call a Christian. He was saved. He will be in heaven. For those of us who are Christians, will meet him someday there. What we need to remember is that while it probably did at times prick his conscience, the story of Bathsheba, he certainly ended up realizing that he was wrong and repenting. It may have pricked his internal conscience, but he also had a little bit less light revealed to him than we do now. He did not have the entirety of the New Testament. He did not have the entirety of the Old Testament. He had limited scriptures. He was not given all the same revealed Word of God information that we are. So, there is to some degree a little bit of different standard. But even back then, it was wrong. He should have just been a one-woman monogamous man.
This is where David is being disingenuous. David is acting like, well, just have abstinence and blah, 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 blah. David, get the fuck out of here. What the fuck is this, 1986?
No, I'm going back to way earlier for my values than 1986. But look, I get that you think that abstinence is impractical and untenable, but you know what? People like you who are encouraging marriage to be put off, you're the ones making abstinence until marriage untenable and impractical for most people. Because, dude, yeah, I get it. When you're encouraging guys to wait until they're 35 to settle down, I mean, granted, you're encouraging them to sleep with at least 35 women in that time, so you're going very, very anti-abstinence. But even just people like you or feminists or society at large today that encourages people, wait at least until your late 20s to get married. Those people are making it harder and harder and harder to remain virgins. Humanity was probably created to be getting married in like their mid to late teens. That's probably, when you look at like the natural world, you look at when our bodies hit puberty, when we hit sexual maturity, when we can start creating children, when sex drives kick in. We were not meant to have 10, 15, 20 years of celibacy before marriage. That is basically an impossible standard to uphold. If we were encouraging people to marry younger and younger and younger, and we weren't prolonging adolescence, we weren't prolonging childhood, we weren't making it so that people are basically emotional children until they're through college, I think that we could make this a very realistic goal. Young Christian couples who marry their high school sweethearts are very often virgins until marriage. It was not particularly hard for my mom to stay a virgin until marriage when she got married as a 20-year-old. She only had to wait really a few years from when she even had a sex drive. Completely different than some woman who waits until she's 35, and it's like, what do you expect her to, to go 20 years without having sex? That is crazy. So instead of just acting like this is untenable, maybe realize that you're the one promoting the untenable situation. You are the one who is encouraging people to engage in the exact behavior that makes what I am saying and what the Bible says and what I think deep down everyone's conscience tells them is the right thing to do. You're the one making that impossible.
You ignorant dumb shit. You're going to preach abstinence? If a girl wants to fuck, she's going to get fucked. Abstinence is this is a very Christian thing. Guess what,
David?
David?
Understand that.
I don't know if you understand this, but God put us on the earth to procreate.
God put us on the earth to procreate, and yet you're not procreating, and I am. You're just whoring around.
The institution of marriage, that was created by man, David. I don't know if you realize that, but the institution of marriage was created by man. So don't come at me with abstinence and this, that, and the other. Oh, no. Abstinence was never an option. The physical purpose of life is reproduction.
So first of all, Donovan, no, you are completely wrong. The institution of marriage was not created by man. It was created by God. And once again, let me direct you to the book of Genesis, the first book of the Old Testament. Genesis 2:20 through 24. The man gave names to all livestock and to the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not a helper fit for him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So there you have it. The institution of marriage was created at the dawn of humanity. God instituted it. God created marriage. God created man and woman specifically for marriage. Marriage is a God ordained covenant relationship between a man and a woman. And look, I don't really know what your beliefs are, Donovan. From what I've gathered, you're not an atheist. That's great. You're some kind of theist. You clearly have some kind of theistic worldview. You seem to have borrowed a lot of kind of beliefs and elements and some kind of core precepts of your ideology from Christianity, and then mix it with all sorts of secular stuff. But when it comes to a Christian worldview, an actual orthodox, historical Christian worldview from someone who's trying to actually follow the Bible, who's trying to actually be a Christian, in that worldview, marriage was created at the dawn of humanity by God. So no, the institution of marriage was not created by man. That's a bullshit conspiracy theory that people use to try to get out of having to get married. The other funny thing that I really think, just to end this here, is you bringing up the idea that procreation is the entire point of humanity. No, it's not the entire point of humanity. It is a very important aspect of humanity. One of the first things that God told humanity was to, be fruitful and multiply. He definitely has told people to have children, and when people have children, they are obeying God. But that's not the ultimate point. The ultimate point of being human, the ultimate purpose of life, is to glorify God. Everything in the universe, the entire purpose of everything is to glorify God. Everything that God does, everything that God's created is to glorify Him. And our highest purpose as humans is to follow God and to do our best to worship and glorify and obey Him. And to do that, I think for most people, that entails having children. So reproduction isn't the entire point of life, but I will definitely give it to you that it is a major part of life and a major part of the human experience. But I'm the one doing that, not you. I'm the one reproducing. And I know that you know that. on an intellectual level, but do you really act like that? Do you really live like that? You're not encouraging your followers to have children. You're not telling them, hey, have children as soon as you can so you don't end up a childless middle-aged man, so you don't end up an old dad, so you don't die lonely at 57 years old because you gave up and got fat because you had nothing to live for. Why are you not encouraging your followers to have children? Like I said earlier, having children is based. As I also said earlier, having children seems to make your final years more enjoyable. It seems to make you happier. It seems to prolong your lifespan. Why aren't you encouraging your followers to have children? Like at all. You seem to be encouraging them to actively avoid it. So it's just funny to me that, you bring up, you're trying to teach me that the point of life is procreation. Donovan, you're not procreating. You're just whoring around. I'm procreating. Encouraging your followers to whore around and not to reproduce is wickedness. You need to start encouraging your guys to have kids. You have a huge responsibility. You have young men that listen to you. You are shaping the future by shaping the opinions of your followers. And you will be judged more harshly for it someday if you take that responsibility and use it irresponsibly. And to be frank, I think that right now you're using it very irresponsibly. You are encouraging wickedness. You are encouraging things that you even know are wicked. You know that it's wrong for women to sleep around. And yet you encourage your guys to sleep around with women, meaning that you know that you're devaluing women. You know that you're taking away value from them. Now, like I've said, obviously I do think that can all be forgiven, that a woman can be sanctified by Christ and, made a new creation and no longer defined by her old sins. But you don't seem to think that. And yet you still think that your guys should be going out and just sleeping with them all the time? How could you encourage that when you basically think that once a woman has slept with a certain number of guys, she's useless? You are encouraging the destruction of people. Anyway, that was a pretty epic response video. I have been recording for hours now, so I should probably stop. But just to reiterate, Donovan, I would love to come on your show. I would love to have this discussion for real. I have a great audio setup and a way cooler backdrop than you do. So I think that's pretty indisputable. I think even you'd have to admit that. So I'd be happy to come on by video chat or something. Pretty much any time. We just have to work the time out in advance. But dude, if you're going to be in Reno, man, I'll come down there. I really am only like a 4-hour drive away. I love coming down there. There's some like cool hot springs on the way down there I've been wanting to hit and take my wife to. So we'd be happy to come down there, and I'll come on the show. We can have like an epic, 3-hour long Joe Rogan-esque discussion about your ideology versus my ideology. And I'll try to convince you why you should adopt a more traditional worldview, and you can try to convince me, why I'm missing out. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's pretty long and involves a whole bunch of other videos being brought in, so hopefully it wasn't too confusing. And, if you don't have the time to watch like 12 hours of video content to get the full context, don't worry. I just hope that I provided enough for you to enjoy it. And I will be back soon with more videos. I am going to start posting regularly again. Happy 2021. I look forward to conversing with you guys all more. Take care. Bye.